All right. Well, from both players, we see a very similar lineup, although with Sharp bringing Faltist. And interestingly enough, Sharp did not choose to ban the Syndicate, but rather chose to ban um, the the dwarfs, which is quite strange because I mean, if you're bringing Faltist, you would expect a more like somewhat targeting strategy towards the dwarfs. But interesting enough, Sharp did not actually ban dwarfs. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do think that's a little bit interesting. I'm not exactly in agreement with the whole syndicate ban over the dwarfs ban, or sorry, the dwarfs ban over the syndicate ban when you're choosing to bring Foltest, because Foltest does kind of do okay against dwarves, at least
Yeah.
occasionally. I wouldn't go so far as to call it favored, however, it is definitely winnable.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
then
And then on the yeah, what did Poison ban again? He banned
the
the dwarfs
syndicate.
himself.
No, he
Oh, Poison.
yeah,
He
Poison
banned Syndicate.
did
Okay.
ban that syndicate.
Okay. All right. So Poison banned the syndicates. He didn't bring Northern Realms all right. So that makes a bit more sense then. So yeah, interesting. I mean, most players are bringing very similar decks, except the difference is that Poison is bringing Death Wish, whereas Sharp is bringing it seems like Death. Well, what do you call it now? It's called Blood Sense, right? After the
Yeah,
the
Blood
decoupling
Scent,
Blood
not
Sense.
Deathlaugh.
Yeah, Blood Sense. So slightly different monster lists, and for the most part, similar-ish. Although we do see a Portal variant here by Poison, whereas I believe the Sharp running Portal, or is Sharp running a regular mid-range Syndicate?
As far as I remember, Sharp did not run Portal.
Regular. Okay, so a regular. That's an interesting one because the Portal version can make things a bit tricky in the mirror because you are kind of inclined to bleed a mirror when your opponent does run Portal, which is awkward because in a Syndicate mirror you don't really want to be bleeding because Final Say is really valuable. If you get Final Say, you kind of want to drive past, take the Final Say because of Leader Graydon, but Portal with Azar is quite threatening if you don't bleed it. So it does make a little bit of a tricky situation to be in when it comes to the mirror. So I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out, if
I am
that
as
does
well.
come down to mirror there.
Let's go watch this very first game that we see Sharp's Ardle Enslave versus Poison's Deathwish.
Interesting. I mean, I feel like at least from my experience, it feels like Detlef, sorry, not Detlef, the Death Wish is slightly unfavored against Nilfgaard. I'm not sure if you agree with that, but I find that at least that I feel slightly unfavored because you don't have a good answer for things like Damien as Death Wish, which can make things quite tricky. But I'm not sure. It's definitely winnable, but I feel like it's slightly unfair for the Death Wish player.
When I play Deathwish, I definitely feel a little bit of like feast or famine. I either feel like I'm absolutely going to stomp through a game or it's going to end up being not very close at all, especially against this Nilfgaard list because these answers to these really greedy cards like Skellen we see in Sharp's hand as well as Damien really are
Yeah.
just a bit of a lack in this Deathwish list for sure. However, sometimes it just really doesn't matter because the Kelta list just goes off and you get all these big cards with Osriel and Eager and all sorts of points with your Death Wish procs.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't believe Sharp has a good answer for Cultidus, right? Because he's playing C6, which means he can't run cards like Invocation, so he doesn't actually have a particularly obvious answer for Cultidus, which is going to make things a little bit interesting for Sharp. Sharp's going to have to find, obviously a way to deal with the Cultidus, which could be difficult. But yeah, we do see you start committing the Glinners on blue coins, so I'm guessing Sharp will try, just win round one with the assimilate value of Glennis, which obviously can do quite a lot of work. I mean, 2 points per assimilate proc, and Sharp has how many ways to proc assimilate in hand? 1, 2, 3. Is that Marching was pulling Vigo, or is it 50-50?
Well, either way, it's either getting Vigo or a Menno into potentially. Oh, it looks like it's actually
Yeah.
getting a Duchess's Informant. I just saw that 1 point card there.
Oh, okay, interesting. I mean, that's also a snap proc, but we do see the Manticore coming down quite easily to answer the Glynis. That's a pretty good Manticore, right? I mean, that Manticore's answering a Semper Vision card, and it still can go off again. It's pretty good value.
Yeah, that's
But
perhaps a little bit of a misplay out of the Sharp.
yeah, I mean, Poison now can. Yeah, the second Manticore now gets he doesn't get the second value due to the fact that he has an open board state where he can just assassinate it. So It's actually quite interesting. So
He does have to sacrifice all that assimilate value, though. That is up to like a 10-point card potentially in this round.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That's a lot of leader value to just give up.
In a way, but in a way, I mean, also you don't at least get the double Manticore, so maybe it balances out in the end. If you only give it a 1 instead of a 2. I'm not sure. Interesting.
And
but we do see it.
Even if the Manticore doesn't end up coming down there, that is still a very risky play going into potentially a Marina.
That's very true, especially on blue coin. But I mean, it's difficult to really start that. That's one of the things about the Deathwish deck, which is so interesting. The Deathwish deck, if you play tall, you play into Manticore. If you play low with like an engine or something, you play into Maruna. And if Sharp plays like, let's say, a Diplomacy first to try bait out one of those cards, Sharp does then lose out in value on the Glimmer. So it is difficult for Sharp to, I guess, play around those cards to a certain extent, at least efficiently.
That is most definitely true. This Deathwish deck, more often than not, usually tends to be about getting those 2 very important Deathwish cards away from the Deathwish player's like capability of actually getting the value out of them. Usually in round 1 or 2, the main objective is to prevent them from being able to get that Maruna in round 3 or that Manticore in round 3.
I mean, those are obviously the biggest threats of the Deathwish player.
And that's even why sometimes you see people Caranthering those cards, even though you have potentially an option to like Caranther a Dettlaff Higher Vampire instead, which can end up being 11 points total, 14 points total on the Caranther, and yet people still choose to Caranther these Marunas and Manticores instead.
I mean, the Seize mechanic is obviously one of the most effective forms of removal currently available in Gwent, because not only are you denying your opponent's engine, but you can potentially get your own engine as well, which basically plays for double the value, which is pretty insane. So if you can ever find yourself in a position where you can play a Maruna onto an engine, it's obviously extremely threatening to take. So it's no surprise that the dominant monster deck makes quite good use of that Seize mechanic, as we see with Nilfgaard and Ardell. Also making quite use of this Seize mechanic. So Sharp does in fact pass here, which means Sharp lose on even. That's interesting. Giving not only losing. Yeah. So I mean, the thing is, Deathwish is probably going to bleed regardless whether Sharp passes on 5 or whether Sharp passes on 4 or 3. But that does now give Poison the ability to bleed for free, so to speak, meaning that even if things don't go very well for Poison during the bleed, Poison still gets a pretty risk-free bleed in this round too.
Yeah, and with that extra added value of essentially a free leader ability, is kind of hard to see how a bleed would usually end up happening here. However, I imagine Sharp's idea was to force Poison to play in, otherwise he just gets his free card back because of the hand limit, going to 8 cards rather than 7 cards if you pass on 5.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so here we see the thrives go down for both players. Obviously, Sharp making use of the Duchess to steal the Andrega Larvae, which is honestly a very threatening card in the long run, because I mean it's very difficult to deal with Andrega Larvae due to the fact that there's not only 2 of them, but they also have armor. So dealing with them is usually very, very inefficient. So it's a very strong engine. And it looks like Sharp is considering stealing that with Ardell. That's pretty big commitment using leader ability in round 2. What do you think about? Is he going to do it?
He does definitely seem to be considering it. It's looking like he's opting to do it. That is a very big commitment. However, if you are going to end up getting that Damien off in round 3, it could potentially end up being worth it if it gets you your card back.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's you do need to get the Damien off. If you don't get the Damien off, then that's a very, very risky line of play. But if you do get the Damien off, it might not be the worst thing in the world. And we do see I do see a lot of players taking this approach more often now that we have defenders in the game, because people feel a lot more comfortable running cards like Damien, which are usually weren't seeing a lot of play before the recent update that added defenders. But now that we have defenders in the game, it seems like more and more people are playing the greedier cards such as Damien, and it looks like Sharp making good use of that Sweer's value, combining it with the Slizzard, making good use for the monster synergy whilst playing Nilfgaard.
Yeah,
as
he's
you
playing
see with
monsters
Nilfgaard
now.
kind of playing Yep, that's kind of how Nilfgaard goes right now. Just play your opponent's deck, right? Because your deck is just not as good.
Yes.
Oh boy, here we go, more monster cards. Yep, Sharp making full use of the monster synergies, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't want to be playing these Nilfgaard cards for Nilfgaard points because it's just not going to get him there for sure. I am surprised to see as many points as Sharp actually has put out this round. He's surviving this Deathwish bleed very well, which isn't something.
I mean, he has committed. He has committed leader to do so, though. So that is, probably one of the big factors that are keeping him in this round. But Sharp does still need to try find a window in round 3 to get the Damien down. Although, how many ways does Poison actually have of dealing with Damien? Is there any ways? Does he run like a Azure Stun or anything like that, or is it just completely free Damien?
Calculus is the best option I can think of, and that's even not a very good solution.
That's quite difficult. That has to be Damien as the lowest, which is I don't really see that happening when Vigo is here. So I guess Sharp will probably get Damien through. Although Sharp has not actually drawn Damien, and Sharp does not find Damien with the War Council. However, Sharp does have Stefan in hand, so it is a potential consideration that Sharp may take the Stefan and then re-utilize the War Council to try fish for Damien one last time. But
it's not looking like he can anymore, considering that experimental remedy just went through.
Ah, that's true. Yeah, okay. So that's, I guess, not gonna happen anymore. So no Damien for Sharp. That's pretty unfortunate. So now Sharp is now in a position where he has no leader ability in this round 3 to make use of.
Yeah, we do see that coming back to kind of cuck Mr. Sharp just a little bit.
Yeah.
He's not able to take advantage of that leader value that he ended up committing in this round 2. And now he's going to pay in some round 3 points for that. But this is definitely not game over yet. However, it is starting to look better and better as this round goes on for Poison.
Oh boy. So what does Poison do about this Cultist? Does Poison Sharp, does Sharp have anything to actually deal with this? Is there any way that Sharp can deal with this? I don't see any obvious ways to do it, I guess. Sharp can maybe try to swarm the board with low point units, but looks like Sharp is just going with the Stefan instead. So what are Sharp's options with Stefan? Just Remedy or maybe even Diplomacy? Probably just want to take a Remedy, more bodies on the board with more Andrega Larvaes, I guess, but I mean, this Cultist is going to just chip away at Sharp's board slowly but surely.
Yeah, this Calculus is going to get some absolutely crazy value, considering that Sharp just is incapable of dealing with it. And like we said earlier, this the lack of Yennefer's Invocation, because you're not really allowed to run that card when you're playing Ardle 6, is really causing Sharp some problems here, because he's just not able to deal with any of these big units coming down from Poison, including this absolutely insane engine and this 9-point Kelly.
Yeah, that is probably one of the biggest weaknesses I've seen in when it comes to C6 Ardle, because even when I sit on ladder, when I see C6, I kind of get into a habit of, okay, I don't have to play around Toll Punish anymore or Invocation, because they're not really able to run those cards, so you are more free to do what you like against Ardle 6 with regards to not having to worry about playing around.
We see the Parasite come down on the Skeleton.
So Poison does actually have some form of control in his deck, which actually that's an interesting card, because the thing about running a card like Parasite when you're playing Deathwish is you don't have any ways to actually deal with your opponent's defender, and if you don't have a way to deal with your opponent's defender, the Parasite can be very, very awkward, because if you can't deal with the defender, what are you going to do with the Parasite? That's something that's quite interesting.
Defensive Parasite, I suppose. You can do it for +6.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess you can do it as just a 6-point play, but I mean, it's not very good, but I guess it's an option. Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Interesting that we don't see that last consume come through from Poison to either enable the Keltalist once again or deny the bleeding on the Keltalist body. Curious what he's holding on to it for.
Yeah, I guess he probably has another Deathwish in hand then, that he wants to utilize that Deathwish roll, that last consume for, I would imagine.
I suppose we'll see here. Okay, never mind, that's Ozma.
So what's his last? Is it maybe Maroon? I'm not 100% sure.
Is that the end of the... No, that was buffering. Okay, well, that was the end of the game anyway.
Alright. So, Poison taking in the early game 1 Nilfgaard, and I mean I think that's pretty good for Poison because normally that matchup can be quite tricky for the Deathwish players. So I would imagine Poison is pretty happy about that one, getting a win with one of the weaker factions, so to speak, and now in a pretty good position to try focus on what else he got. He's got to win with his
Northern
Syndicate
Realms?
and
Oh yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Syndicate and
Syndicate
Nilfgaard.
Nilfgaard, yeah. So I imagine Nilfgaard's going to be the biggest challenge for Poisson, yeah.
So in this next game, we see Sharp's Franny Dwarves versus Poisson's Syndicate here, his wild card. And this matchup is definitely pretty heavily favored for the Dwarves player for sure. The ping engines that you get from the mercenaries are just so valuable against.
Yeah, and
against
Syndicate doesn't,
list.
for the most part, have an efficient way of dealing with that. Like, the deck goes very wide, and Syndicate is not a deck that can actually deal with. Syndicate's better against dealing with decks that go tall because it has a lot of ways to do quite efficient tall punishes, but it can't quite deal with things going wide. I mean, there's only so many options that Syndicate has available to it, mostly with Earvault. But once that Earvault comes through, Syndicate kind of just runs out of answers for the Dwarf engine, which can completely shut down the opposition's engine once developed because of the whole reactive engine nature of it.
And with the addition of defenders, it's made this matchup even a little bit more polarized than we have seen before, just because it allows at least two of those Justice mercenaries to be protected by this defender, and that means they have to spend 6 additional coins to get through that defender to even start doing damage to those mercenaries.
Yeah, once that's done, the damage is pretty much almost done. And we see both players committing. All right, I see. We do see Waters. Is this actually a dwarf deck, or is this Harmony hybrid type of deck?
Yeah, that is throwing me off a little bit. I don't actually see it in his.
I do see. Wait, that has to be Harmony. There's Barnabas in his hand. That has to be Harmony.
I don't actually see Waters in his list submitted in the like open deck list though. It's interesting. I don't know if we have an outdated link or something, but I guess he has Waters. This looks like a hybrid sort of list.
We'll just have to go with this then. Although that changes the matchup. It is hybrid. See that it is hybrid. So this actually changes the matchup quite a bit because I think Harmony versus Syndicate now is actually. I think it's kind of a close matchup, honestly. So we do see both players committing quite valuable engines here, but Poison committed the what's Doggo called again? I can't remember exactly.
Dire Mutated Hound.
Dire Mutated Hound, that's the one. And that is a very, very scary engine. There's not a lot of ways you can efficiently deal with that. Sharp does use the skirmisher to, chip away the armor and turn it off. But even that, you're playing essentially a 2-point card just to turn the other card off, which is, still in itself not a very efficient way to trade, although it is one of the more efficient ways available. But still not very efficient. But I mean, that's kind of all you have as an option to yourself. And you gotta kind of take it.
Well, given that you trade down by 4 points and trade up by 4 provisions, it's not terrible, but it is very, very low tempo.
Yeah. And we do see an early pass coming up, Poison. Interesting that both players, make use of the threat with a poison and then, Poison pass. I guess Sharp actually only had Sharp had the way with Coil of the Forest onto Weeping Willow if he really wants to. Interesting enough, Sharp is playing with a Zap. You don't normally see that in Square Tile because you kind of want to be playing as many, tags as possible for as much harmony value as possible. So it's quite interesting to see a Zap in the list.
Maybe he's not super confident in his capability of dealing with the Nilfgaard threatening cards like we were talking about last game with Skellen and Damien, so he wants to run that Zap instead. Be able to just deal with them.
And Sharp is looking to maybe push round 2. Starting off with the Defender, and this is of course something that cannot be ignored because if you do not answer this, you essentially can't answer any of the other cards which is obviously a big problem because Squirtle has cards that you really do need to answer with all their army engines. And it looks like Poison answering back, not directly with the Defender, but with rather a Defender of his own. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and taking a look at his deck there, I didn't even see any Merc, so this is full-on Harmony list and not just like a hybrid dwarf harmony list that we've seen a couple times in previous patches. This is looking to be just full harmony, trying to get value out of that waters, as well as these other harmony tags with the rangers.
It does seem that Sharp is making use of a few of the dwarf packages, so to speak, for a bit of extra value with the Monroe, as we see that comes down here, which can't get answered immediately due to the fact that the defender is on board protecting Sharp's engines, and Poisson does need to deal with that defender before he can even try and answer the berserkers on the board.
Yeah, and one of the very few ways of actually dealing with these berserkers efficiently is being able to bleed them, because that does go through the armor, and Executioner does do a very good job of that. However, because Poisson is not going to be able to get that point or that bleeding down in a timely manner, it's not actually going to end up mattering, and we're just going to see these 4 provision cards play for 7 points.
Yeah. Yeah, as we've seen, defender being a very strong mechanic, although Poisson now does take Sharp's defender, meaning now Poisson has kind of flipped the tables, and Sharp does need to answer the opponent's defenders before Sharp can do anything else, and I don't see a very efficient way that Sharp can deal with both these defenders. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see how Sharp adapts to this.
My guess would be he's not really concerned about actually controlling his opponent's side of the board here, and his goal is probably just to see that Sewer Boy, the Ewald, come out at some point here.
I mean, it is quite... The one downside is can't answer any of the opponent's threats. If the opponent does play something like Caleb or whatnot, you literally can't do anything about it with all these defenders on the board, and down comes Caleb. So it looks like Poisson is going to be able to quite freely set up his bounty engine, although the funny thing is those berserkers can still randomly damage opponents' cards, and they do ignore defenders, so to speak. So there is a chance that those defenders ping off that executioner, and then maybe Poisson will need to commit Earvault to make use of that Caleb, which would obviously not be ideal for him.
I would feel very good for Sharp, though. Is the ultimate representation of talent in Gwent the Witcher card game, so it'd be hard to deny him that.
Oh boy. So what is Sharp deciding wants to be done here?
It's looking like he's contemplating dealing with one of these defenders, maybe trying to zap that Figgish.
Oak is quite interesting because, Oak being a very, very good target for Graydon, and playing it on a board state like this with no defender on your sideboard, and you don't have final say because you're obviously in round 2, and looks like Poisson, without any hesitation, putting the bounty on the Oak and getting that sweet Graydon value on the Oak, and now threatening to get a card. Does this actually tempo in my head? He gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I don't think so.
Does not tempo in my head. So Sharp does actually still have the option to pass. And it looks like that Poisson just spending all the coins, emptying his bank, and Sharp now in a position where his dwarfs are going to die soon, but luckily for Sharp, he doesn't actually need to make use of the dwarfs anymore, at least not to the extent that it denies any Barnabas value or anything like that. But I'm interested to see if if Sharp is going to keep going or going to take this pass.
Playing into this defender does feel very inefficient, because his way to answer it is by playing a 1-point zap or a 5-point Malayan, and is that what he's going to choose to do? He chooses to do that. He keeps going.
That's a 1 tempo zap that essentially gives Poisson 2 coins. So in a way, you could look at that as a -1 point play, in a way. But that is interesting. Poisson Sharp really wants to smoke this round, it seems. So what is Poisson, or what is Sharp trying to achieve from this bleed? Trying to get out an Earvault, or maybe trying to get out like a Madame Louise, or something like that, I would imagine? Trying to break up the packages, or the combos?
That would be my best guess. Looking for that Louisa or Savola. Maybe giving it just a little bit too much respect, and it is going to cost him potentially a card here.
I mean, Poisson only needs... what, 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, that should tempo. That should tempo Poisson ahead, and realistically speaking, I don't really see a way that Sharp is going to get his card back due to the fact that he hasn't really got any unique tags on the board besides dwarves. So Barnabas isn't looking that threatening. Mullane isn't really going to kill anything besides Caleb if Sharp wants to kill Caleb, I suppose. But I don't really think Sharp is in a position to get his card back at this point.
So maybe we just see trade-ups by playing this Poison Ranger here, or maybe Sharp is still trying to hold on to this poison to potentially do some tall unit punish, or just takes a pass.
Looks like a pass. Okay, so what does both? Okay, so obviously Sharp still has the leader, Waters, you know, the good old Square Tall Harmony engine package for round 3, and Poisson does have the Evolt. He does have the Savola.
Portal as well, very important.
Oh, and Portal. So, oh boy, that's going to be quite scary. Especially if he has first say, because then your leader ability procs the Portal as well, which means that you are essentially losing a lot of value on your own leader due to the fact that it procs your opponent's engines. I guess Sharp does have Mullane to deal with one of the Seductresses, but interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely a not so great situation for Sharp here, which is a bit unexpected, at least from what we initially thought this matchup was at the beginning of this cast.
We originally thought it was a dwarf deck, but it seems like it is a Harmony deck. Although I find that Harmony versus Syndicate is a kind of a close one, not as much of a blowout as we saw previous seasons where the Harmony player was highly favored. I feel like it's much closer now than in the past. But yeah, at least Sharp is not playing dwarves, because that would be a much more difficult position for Poisson to play against. And we do see the early Madame. That's interesting, because if you played early Madame like that and your intention is to play Savola, you kind of can't play your Morels or any other tribute cards early, because it will, you know, require you to use that tribute. It requires you to use a tribute. So I imagine that Poisson's going to play an early Savola now, but does Sharp have any punish for that? Not really. Only has one poison. He's using it now.
Yeah, but so that is definitely a risky decision from Poisson, because as far as he knows, Sharp could have drawn that Weeping Willow.
I guess, but he has Cork, so he doesn't really mind. Okay, interesting. Does run the Corkstein, so I guess from Poisson's perspective, he was thinking to himself, if my opponent puts a poison, I can always purify it anyway, so it's safe.
That is ultimately what we see happen.
And Ida does come. Is it in this matchup? I feel like Ida is pretty valuable on a purify, but we do see an Ida come down for just pure vitality value. That does make that fledgling though a very big target. Due to the fact that, you know, Poisson, if he can kill that fledgling, not only is he denying future value on the Harmony procs, but he's also denying future value on the Vitality procs. So that's fledgling a very, very juicy target if Poisson has a way to deal with it.
From Sharp's perspective, however, how valuable is this Purify, given that if something does get poisoned, the leader most likely is going to come through with a follow-up poison, and given that Graydon doesn't really exist anymore, bounties aren't exactly the most threatening things anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, a bounty on Barnabas is still a little bit threatening, but I guess you could always play Barnabas right at the end, so it might not matter. How much ways of Harmony does he still have left to proc? He's got a Dwarf and the Gnome, so he can still proc Harmony, essentially 3 more times. Well, 3 times with 1 card. So, I mean, Sharp does have a few points, but
he's got this guard in hand, though, this 3-point guard.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting you run guard in a non-dwarf deck. Very, very interesting. And Poisson does play the Adriana for no Seductress, just for the profit. So I would imagine he's trying to, get his bank filled up so he can maybe play Earvolt and deal some Harmony potentially. Or I'm not sure what else would he be saving his coins for.
Maybe just playing around a potential melee and doesn't want to spend 5 coins for 4 points.
Yeah, I guess it's also a possibility. And he does play the Witch Hunter, putting the bounty on the Ida. And does he... So Sharp does buff the Ida up. That means that Poisson does need to spend 8 coins with Earvolt in order to kill that Ida. Or, okay,
7 with
KT. Although, does Poison have an efficient way to spend... What's his last card? I would presume it's Earvault. We haven't seen Muriel still, but... Oh wait, he's spending his coin. Okay, so... His leader is going to be for what? He's played both his Slanders or not? Okay, so another Slander. And here we see the Slander on the bottom. That's a lot of points. 6 points basically for free, plus the 3.9 point Slander essentially. 11-point leader if you want to add the 2 coins that the leader gives you, so not bad. And it seems that that Poison is just emptying out the rest of his bank. I wonder what
he does go to odd coins though, which kind of indicates not a Ewald.
Yeah, although I guess there's nothing else to spend anything on, so you can have a choice in that matter.
Interesting that Sharp chooses to take out the Executioner at this point. Probably just betting on a bounty, although there's not really anything that Sharp beats here.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't beat Execute, I mean, yeah, the bleed in round 2 was obviously, it got to a point where it started becoming inefficient due to the fact that he went to card down. That was quite a close game though, but that bleed round 2, I would have expected a pass 1 turn earlier from Sharp. Interesting that he decided to go that 1 extra card through. What did he actually manage? I can't remember. What did he actually manage to get out of his opponent for that extra card? He traded a card for what did he get out? I think it was Professor.
Do not
Professor,
remember.
Right? I believe it was Professor. Wasn't it Professor?
The story that I get out of this match is more so one of deck building, in which we see some interesting like dwarf packages getting played from Sharp's side that kind of end up screwing him over a little bit later in later rounds, with that guard playing for 3 points.
Yeah, I mean the guard is not a card you want to be playing if you're bleeding round 2 and going into short round 3. I guess it's not a very good top deck. But yeah, I guess if you're using, I mean, if you're utilizing the dwarf package, it can be pretty valuable if you can get all of the dwarfs down and whatnot. But outside of that, it can be a very, very bad top deck if you're pushing round 2 and going into short round 3.
Yes, very, very risky decision. I'd agree.
All right, so what are we at? 2-0 in favor of Poison, right? So Poison now does need to find a win with his Nilfgaard deck, which, as we've seen in the past, can be tricky. Sometimes, people go 2-0 up and, they can't get a win if they left their last deck, and we see reverse sweeps happen sometimes because of that.
All right, so in this game 3, we see Poison's Enslave versus Sharp's Mystic Echo once again. That seems to be this harmony with a heavier dwarf package hybrid type of list.
Yeah, we do see a lot of dwarf cards in this deck, although in a harmony deck, which is kind of interesting. And it seems that Sharp does have quite a lot of the dwarf package in his opening hand, which means he can make use of the guard quite nicely here. Unlike the previous game where he top decked into that guard, at least this game he might get some good value that the guard in round 1, which I think is probably the best use you can get out of the guard, is just playing in round 1 where you have the full dwarf package.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. This guard is a really interesting choice, but if you are able to draw the correct amount of cards in the correct rounds at the correct time, it is capable of getting some pretty decent value.
So, and we do see a opener with Poison's playing Yoink 9, right? So okay, so he's playing the Sergeant.
Yoink 6, I think you meant to say.
Oh, sorry, Yoink 6. Yoink 6, yeah, Yoink 6.
Yoink 9, that would be a very big deck.
Yoink someone's called to... Oh boy. And yeah, it seems like Poison is kind of just throwing away bad cards at this point and not really caring too much about the round 1 due to the fact that he's obviously just playing his bronzes for very low tempo, but it seems like he's kind of giving up the round without much fight, playing just, as we see, bad cards after bad cards. I wonder if that's a tell that he's maybe got a dysfunctional opening hand and he's decided he's going to just throw away bad cards, or if he believes he can beat Harmony in a long round 3.
Yeah, what do you think this long round 3 ends up looking like for a 6 Yoink Enslave?
I mean, I can't imagine it being very good unless you can get your Daemon to stick somehow and get good Daemon value, but otherwise I can't imagine Nilfgaard being very happy going into long round 3 against any square tile deck, to be honest.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. They do have cards that are capable of dealing with engines that are very low provision, like these Assassinations, and tourney joust. However, if you're just playing a bunch of 4 provision cards to be able to deal with your opponent's 10 provision cards, you're going to end up losing anyway, even if on an individual card-to-card basis it is efficient for you, just because you're playing much less provisions than your opponent in the given round.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do see a guard coming down now for 7 points. Bad.
Actual
so
guard value, though.
Yeah, Shop is getting, somewhat decent value with this guard this game. But yeah, Poisson is basically trying. From what I'm gathering here, Poisson's basically saying, "I don't care about this round. I'll take you in a long round 3," which is an interesting decision due to the fact that Nilfgaard not particularly favored, I would imagine, in a long round 3, unless Poisson believes otherwise or has some type of plan that he can take the long run somehow.
Yeah, I think this is more of an indication of Poisson's hand just not being super good in this round 1. And that, on top of getting the red coin, makes winning this round 1 really difficult, and getting that round control that he probably values very highly not so easy.
I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, it sounds like about what I would expect here from him. So at this point, I guess both players are trading cards and trying to see if they can bleed something of value out of their opposition. We do see a Vigo come down to do some thinning out of Poisson. So yeah, that is a decent amount of points. It's thinning, it's tempo. So Poisson not quite giving up the round just yet.
Although no impairs.
Looks like, was that a miss or was that he's going for the points rather than the thinning?
Looking at the deck, it seems like he doesn't run Impairs. This is very reminiscent of Santu's deck from the EGC qualifier. This might actually be a straight copy of it.
And Sharp does actually bow out of this round, which I would imagine that's pretty good for Poisson, and have taken round 1 very, very cost efficiently, not committing pretty much any valuable resources there, and still taking round 1. So he doesn't quite have to take the long round 3 as we initially expected. So we might see a beat come out of Poisson. Due to the fact that Harmony is, of course, or Squirtle in general, very, very threatening in a long round 3, especially when you're a deck like Nilfgaard that doesn't have, the most efficient answers for all of it.
Yeah, I imagine Poisson is very happy about how that round 1 went, given how the early cards went, and he didn't really seem to have the points, and then eventually he ends up being able to take the round through Sharp's pass, but then he takes a dry pass. I don't know what's happening anymore.
That's very strange. I mean, Poisson, I guess, is very, very confident on 3 then. I mean, he didn't seem to really be in any type of... because he didn't seem like he really wanted to win round 1, and then he won round 1 anyway, still decided to take the dry pass round 2. So I guess he's very confident in how his round 3 is going to work, which I'm very curious to see how that's going to work. And Sharp does miss the Oak and the Bottomless. However, Sharp can find one of them with Call of the Forest, but obviously those are pretty much 2 of Squirtle's, arguably 2 of the best cards. So I imagine Sharp's not happy about missing both of those.
He could double call if he really wanted to and sacrifice that second Waters. That was his choice, but I can't imagine that's going to end up happening.
I would imagine probably not going to be the situation he's going to do. I'm really, really curious to see from Poisson's perspective, because it seems to me he's got some kind of plan to deal with this, because otherwise taking the long round there is quite crazy. But I'm very curious to see how this plan shapes out for Poisson. I imagine he's relying quite heavily on Damien / Stefan value, because I can't really see outside of that how he's going to actually have the points to deal with this.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It seems like we're seeing the poison come down to be able to deal with this defender, and that's actually going to feel super nice for Sharp.
The nice thing about that is your opponent can't purify it, because if they purify, they lose the defender tag. So it puts your opponent in a pretty awkward position. Like, if they purify the poison, they lose the defender tag. If they don't purify the poison, well, they're just giving you free poison value.
This will cost him the call into a poison tag, though. If Sharp does decide to actually go for the poison. Let's see. It seems like he bypasses both the tree and the Barnabas.
Isn't the correct line of play there actually to use the Weeping Willow first, to see if your opponent maybe purifies it, and then you decide if you want to commit the call for that? Because maybe, hypothetically, the opponent does purify it to deny the poison value. Then you know, okay, I don't have to actually commit the call onto the poison anymore, because the poison.
But that is one less harmony value, because you don't get the you don't get the harmony on the tree by playing a dryad after, but you do get the harmony on the dryad by playing a tree after. So it is a little bit greedy. I will agree, but there is a reason to do it.
Yeah, I guess it is interesting consideration. So, I mean, one way or another, this defender is going to get dealt with, either from self-purification or from poison. One way or another, that defender will go down in the next turn, I would imagine.
Interesting that he also doesn't choose to just purify the defender rather than committing the call into one of these poison cards. Given that a second Waters hasn't come out yet, it might indicate that Sharp's plan is to go for a double call, probably into that Great Oak.
I mean, I guess there was no real reason to use the previous round, but you're playing another Dried anyway, so you wouldn't have got the proc. Although, if he does commit another card now, then I guess he is playing for Oak. I guess that's not terrible, because you can obviously use it to answer a Damien or something. But I'm surprised he takes the sequencing. He does open himself up to the opponent playing Yoink Leader plus Damien right now, because now, you know, Poison can of course yoink Sharp's defender and then place Damien right next to it, and then Poison will not be able to answer the Damien, and that is what Poison is doing. He is yoinking Sharp's defender. I would imagine this will be followed by a Damien now on the same row, and that is exactly what we see. I'm surprised that Sharp sequenced it in that way, because that did open himself up to quite a few problems there.
Are we going to see the Purify come down onto his own defender? Well, he can get that tree, actually.
I guess he can. Okay, yeah. I guess yeah, that's true. Okay, so he does have a way to deal with it. Okay, so maybe I was too early in pointing that. So, we do see the Damien does get actually answered quite nicely there. Although it does cost him a leader to do that, but I mean, definitely worth it, I think, at that point. And now we do see a Stefan, and I don't think that Sharp has an answer for that, unfortunately.
Yeah, so no leader ability to bail him out this time.
Yeah, it looks like that that Stefan is gonna go through, and I mean, Poison is down quite a few points. Quite a few point deficit here, but I mean, that's Stefan. I mean, if you can play like Stefan into Oak, for example, with Bribery, you can get quite a few points.
Oh, that Swears is super bad for Sharp here. Super good for Poison. That's going to help make up some of this deficit that he's currently experiencing at the moment. So we see these engines come down earlier rather than later. This Berserker that just got played isn't actually going to be able to burn all this armor and convert them into points unless Poison actually wants to do damage to them. But from what I can tell, most of the sequencing before this was forced for the most part, or at least more efficient to do it this way. It does cost a point on this Berserker. Does Poison actually have the capability of getting a double poison here? Does he have an additional experimental remedy, maybe? I don't even know if that second Dryad Ranger is in Graveyard. Do we know that? I don't think we do. I don't actually hear Spyro anymore. So it's looking like I'm going on my own for the rest of this game, and then we'll figure it out for the next game. So we do actually see the double poison come through. The Bribery actually manages to hit this Willow to be able to actually take advantage of that poison to go into the Harmony. Followed up by a second Bribery to get a third Defender on Poison's side. And this deficit is definitely being made up very slowly. I don't know if it's going to be too little too late for Poison's side. It very well might be. We see that that Marauder come down to play for 6 points. And Sharp does get a couple more pings off of these engines. Okay. And we got Spyro back.
Alright, I'm not sure what happened there. Alright, so I'm back. The lane comes down. How much points are we down by? Oh, that's quite a point deficit. Oh boy.
20 points. That has to be a very big card.
Yeah, I can't really think of any. Trust. I mean, how much? No, we don't have any. Yeah, it can't ever be enough. Not without any Assimilate engines on the board, at least.
Can you play the video, please? Look at that, beautiful, beautiful, right there.
Okay, was that my side that got disconnected? What the heck happened there?
So we see Sharp take his first game of this round.
I'm
by 9
surprised that
points.
Poisson was so confident in his round 3 like that. That's quite interesting, considering. I mean, it is open deckless. You can tell if your deck will be favored in the long round against your opponent's deck, but he decided, I'll take the long round. Interesting.
Yeah, very
Very, very
interesting game there. I'd be curious to actually hear what his thought process was.
Yeah, me too. Just taking a long run against Harmony with Nilfgaard. Yeah. Taking a long run against any deck with Nilfgaard kind of seems weird right now.
True. Very true. Alright, let's go get into game 4. Alright, so in this game 4, we have Poisson's Enslave once again versus Sharp's Inspired Zeal, this Foltest ability. And we see Sharp with the red coin here, being able to go second, and Poisson with the blue coin going first. This matchup.
How impactful do you find? Do you feel like coin flip is in this matchup? What do you feel about the coins that we see here?
Well, this matchup is very, very round 1 heavy. It's all about winning this round 1, at least going against Foltest. It's all about winning the round 1 and being able to bleed out either their second set of commandos or their Draug, just so that you don't get way outvalued in that round 3 by this Draug and Sabrina.
I think the blue coin is actually a very big factor because, firstly, we saw that Sharp does run a Moondust, which means that Poisson can, of course, use tactical advantage on the. Which he doesn't. He could have used tactical advantage on the Hefty Hells to protect it from Moondust, which
we at least think he runs Moondust. We don't actually know that.
Okay, my bad.
Because we have outdated lists.
Okay, never mind then. And Sharp, if Sharp had blue coin, you could obviously utilize tactical advantage himself to boost up a commando to make you so he doesn't use leader charge to get it out immediately. And interesting enough, he does play the Redanian Knight, which is a very, you guys could say problematic card in this matchup, because you do not want to be playing this card in a round 3 because it gives him such a good Swears target. Whereas I guess that Sharp, now being on red coin, doesn't mind making that trade now. So he's saying, okay, I'm gonna play this card round 1 because my opponent does commit the Swears. Rather the trade happen here than round 3.
Same thing can be said about Redanian archers. And we see those in pretty much every NR list. I'd be very surprised if Sharp didn't actually end up running those.
Yeah, I guess that archer is still a thing that Sharp is going to have to figure out how to get a foothold in. And Sharp, considering playing Falliber here, that's a pretty big commitment to make. We do see, the Hefty Hulge is on the board, 2 charges in it. I would imagine in this board state that Sharp is probably looking just to try trade up and get out of this round, whereas Poisson is going to try probably, hold on to. He's already got his, threatening engine down. I think he's pretty comfortable taking round 1. So I guess Poisson, both players are going to try to preserve their good cards whilst trying to bleed out their opposition out of their better cards.
We see an answer to this Redanian Knight come through that actually eats the shield off of Poisson's Hefty Helge, and he just rebuffs it up.
Puts it back on. So that's a good utilization of the shield there from Poisson, making extra use of the shield, basically playing for 2 extra points. So pretty good value coming out of that shield there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I suppose he did run the risk of having the... Oh no, the Redanian Knight on Poisson's side was at 3 at the time that move was made.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's not true.
Sharp thinking about committing the Roche. That's interesting. I mean, it's worth it if he can take round 1, but can he realistically take round 1 with this Hefty Helge on the board?
It seems like he's really going to try to do that. Although,
whether
or not it's the right decision.
If it wins in the round, it's really good for him. If it doesn't win the round, it's really bad for him. So it's all going to come down to whether he wins round 1 or not. This is a very big play because, I mean, if it works, you're very happy. If it doesn't work, you're very, very sad. So this is almost like an all-in or I guess you could say like an all-in line of play, in my opinion. This is very, very interesting to see, yeah.
Maybe Sharp's idea was to try to tempo so much in one single card that Poisson would be forced to go 2 cards down to take this round 1.
Yeah. That's also a very good point. If we did see that, then obviously Poison have a much harder time bleeding, almost impossible to do so, you could argue. But that Radaean Knight does give Poison 1 extra point, which means he is still in this round by 1 point, keeping him here and preventing Sharp from ever getting that early pass, which maybe Sharp was hoping for there. And
now we see low tempo coming from Sharp rather than.
I guess Sharp is trying to protect that trying to Knight. Although realistically, with the hefty helds having a charge on it anyway, I don't really think this this buff on the Duchess is going to make any difference here.
Assassination comes down to take out one of these commandos. Now, will Poison take out the second commando? No, he chooses not to.
No, he doesn't.
Rather than playing around Sharp scouts. Just plays for value.
Interesting. So he could have played to deny carryover / tempo, or he could have just played for immediate value. So it does seem like Poison does value the immediate value rather than the potential value, which does actually benefit him due to the fact that we can see Sharp's hand. He does not actually have a way to copy those commanders, so it looks like Poison does make the right call, but of course he does not know that yet, I imagine.
It's looking like Sharp's thinking about committing this Falibor. Again, this is another
Sharp
really big commitment.
I mean, if Sharp wins the round, this is all worth it. But if Sharp doesn't win the round, then this is kind of not worth it, I don't think. I mean, it's almost crossing the point where there's almost an argument to be made that even if Sharp does win this round, there is a point where it actually does not become worth it. But, I mean, Falters in a long round 3 is very, very threatening if you're the Nilfgaard players. So if Sharp wins round 1, this commitment isn't as crazy as it might look, I guess you could say.
Very, very risky, though. Undeniably risky.
Very risky. Definitely very, very risky. I guess we'll see how it turns out. I mean, there is also the risk that, Sharp might... I mean, Poison might actually lose on even, potentially, if he, pushes too far. And we did see the Falibur come down to remove the shield off the Hefty Helge, which made him lose 2 points. So I'm imagining that he's doing that to set up his Selkirk, which is another big commitment that will come down in round 1. And at this point, oh wait, not okay.
Chooses to take the pass, so this is bad for Sharp. That is not a very good round 1.
Yeah,
Can't
that
be
was a big
feeling very good.
Yeah, big commitment coming down by Sharp and not even taking round 1, which means that he is open up to a bleed now. And the thing about being bled here is he no longer can use that. I mean, one of the threatening things we see with Falters is that whole, the carryover with the commandos. And what you can do is often you can lose round 1 without committing your commandos, and then in round 2, you can kind of threaten your opponent and say to them, do you want to bleed me? Because if you bleed me, I'm going to play for carryover, while you're going to be playing for value, and I'm going to be trading up essentially, because everything I'm playing is playing for carryover. Whereas now, due to the fact that Sharp has played the Roshan round 1, he no longer can do that anymore. So now he's open up to like a full-on bleed where he can't really trade, value for carryover anymore.
Yeah, and when you're able to actually get this Foltis list working correctly, and you're playing these Blue Stripe Scouts as 4 provision cards, getting 8 points of tempo on top of 4 points of carryover, that just feels so amazing as the Foltis player. But obviously,
and really bad for the opponent to bleed against it.
Yeah, bleed against it or play round 1 against it. It always feels bad, no matter what sort of situation you end up in.
Yeah, for sure. And do you see the Pella coming down here? Was that over? How did he get that? Was he that for Royal Decree, or I can't remember? Did he pull it with Royal Decree?
I think so. That seems to be the only tutor that I see other than.
Okay, that's interesting commitment. So, I mean, how does Sharp get out the commanders in round 3 then?
Uh-oh, that's a buffer. Oh boy. Alright, listen, Buffer, I need you to play the video, okay? Perfect, there we go.
So how is Sharp actually going to get out the commanders in round 3 now that he's spent the Royal Decree? I guess, okay, so he's going to have to draw them. He's going to be talented at the video game and draw the commanders from hand.
With 3 commandos in deck and only 11 cards. Crazy. Yeah, you get to see 5 of those.
I've seen some situations where, you have a few in deck and you don't top top deck them in round 3. But I guess
All
Sharp
three
is a
of them-
talented individual. So.
All 3 of them need to be in the bottom 6 for him to miss them.
Yeah, it's probably a good chance he gets them, but you never know. These things sometimes happen. And we do see the Glynis come down. So, Poisson does have 3 engines of his own on the board right now with the Sergeant, the Glynis, and the Vigo. So, Sharp doesn't have that many ways to answer all of these. He can only answer one of them, and I imagine it's going to probably answer the Glynis. The Glynis still is within Saltcoat range at this point. So, Sharp can, deal with the Glynis. But the other 2 engines, Sharp does not really have an immediate way. Although, maybe Sharp... Was there an argument there to not deal with the Glynis and use that as your Baron target perhaps instead? Let the Glynis grow and then use
maybe.
Baron?
Yeah, I could definitely see that line of play. However, that isn't the one that Sharp chooses, and he still does get a up to 10-point Baron onto that Fifon.
And now Sharp, not having his only control card available to him means he cannot deal with the Damien, which means that Poisson can go for the double yoink, and there is a perfect 6-point body on the board ready available for Poisson to steal his leader. And if Sharp goes for this, he's making that 6-point yoink even more threatening due to the fact that it's going to give Poisson an engine of his own on top of that. That is a very, very juicy yoink available for Poisson, which I imagine he's going to have no hesitation in taking.
And yeah, that is what we see. I was maybe thinking that Sharp's plan was to use his final Zeal charge onto that 6-point unit to prevent Poisson's.
Boy.
Oh yeah, we're now playing Nilfgaard the NR card game.
And we do see Sharp bowing out here, having enough of all of his cards being stolen. And Poisson coming with a 2-0 there to take the series 3-1 overall. Very interesting game that one was. So I believe it all went wrong in round 1 for Sharp, committing so much to try take round 1 and then not being able to take round 1 was kind of the nail in the coffin there, I believe.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That round 1 did not feel very good at all for Sharp and ended up being very beneficial for Poisson, getting so much commitment out of Sharp while being still able to take the bleed in round 2 is just absolutely ideal for Poisson in this matchup.
Yeah, for sure.
So, congratulations to Poisson winning his first series in week 1 of the Gwent League.
Yeah, pretty solid win there, 3-1, and quite convincingly, in fact, in a lot of those games. All right, so we see both players banning Syndicate, which is pretty. I mean, I guess that's a pretty reasonable ban due to the fact that Syndicate is arguably one of the strongest factions right now, especially after the hotfix. And I guess both players are respecting that and both banning each other's Syndicate decks.
Although we do not know whether this series was played before or after hotfix, but still, even before hotfix, Syndicate was an absolute powerhouse, and some of the top pro ladder players in tournaments did feel like Syndicate was much more of a threat in tournaments, more so than Scoia'tael, even when Dwarfs was absolutely dominant right at the beginning of this patch.
Yeah, and we do see both players starting with Nilfgaard, which is, I mean, if this is the player's weaker deck, so to speak, then this is a very important game because whoever wins this game means they get their weaker faction out of the way, and that puts them in a pretty good position going forward. So this is actually quite an important game here in the first game of the series.
I suppose in this series, the only list that we truly expect to go through is the Scoia'tael list. The dwarf list, that's really just quite strong. It would really only be a major upset if the Scoia'tael list was to lose.
Yeah.
In pretty much every other matchup, kind of expect a close game.
Yeah. I mean, Monsters, at least Deathlove, should be favored against Nilfgaard, so it should have a pretty, easy way to get a win with it in eventually, but Nilfgaard can struggle sometimes in tournament settings, and looks like both players are playing vanilla leads. Santu, of course, playing a 10-point vanilla lead, while his opponent Ultimate playing a 9-point vanilla lead. Both players are, in fact, playing Yoink 6, so it's interesting to see how they make use of that. It's a very interesting mirror because I mean, both players playing Yoink Six is quite interesting because you can't exactly steal each other's, Damien's, because you can just always steal it back. Although, if one player does steal the other player's Damien, you can do something cheeky like play, leader onto your opponent's Damien, and then on the same turn play something like a
Wow,
battle
that was a big
preparation.
Peter.
Wait, how much was that, Peter? How
That
much?
was a 14-point Peter.
Oh wow, that's pretty good value for Oswald. But although he is on blue coins, so I imagine Santu is probably looking at this and saying to himself he doesn't mind too much because he's already committed Hefty Helge and Peter. It doesn't really bother Santu that much. Final say isn't going to play a massive role in this matchup, so I would imagine Santu is going to probably try play for some trading up value and then looking to get out early.
Yeah, that does seem to be Santu's plan. Santu does see that Garrison is on the top of Olsmer's deck there, and that is one of the really strange or unconventional cards that we see Olsmer running here, a Garrison rather than one of these other tactics that you usually see getting run in order to get to 12 tactics total to get that C6 on the leader ability.
So what is the counterplay for both players' perspectives on the opponent stealing their Damien or Stefan and then boosting it up on the same turn? How does either one of these players play around that?
Best solution I can think of is obviously Defender, since that does go to 7 points rather than 6 points. However, if that is put on the edge of a row, it opens itself up to getting assassinated, followed by a leader yoink.
Yeah, that's true. Do we see Diviners in these lists? I mean, I would imagine Diviners also played. Yeah. So both players, I would imagine, have Diviner available, so they can also deal with defenders with Diviners quite efficiently. So I would imagine to see something like that. So Osmond does win round one, although he did commit a few resources. He did commit Hefty Helge. He did commit Peter, so it wasn't like it was free for him. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't think that final say is going to matter too much. So I think we're probably going to see a long round 3 come down from both players due to the fact that this is for the most part, a very direct mirror.
One of the major advantages of Yoink 6 over Yoink 5 in this mirror specifically is the Glynis, because Yoink on that card followed by an Assimilate is still re-yoinkable by a Yoink 6 rather than a Yoink 5.
Yeah. And that is a very good point because, like, if your opponent plays, so I guess the way to play around that is potentially try to proc it twice in one turn, so it goes to 8 immediately. But how many ways do you have of doing that? I guess Vigo could do that potentially.
Vigo into Informant.
Yeah, Vigo, or maybe even Trist. I think Trist also would do it potentially.
Yep.
So I would imagine you would try to get your Glynis immediately to 8. Well, yeah, that's an interesting call there. He does drop the Stefan on the dry pass. Was that really his worst card?
Well, maybe Santu's idea is that he doesn't want to be holding on to these very valuable order cards. Although, if he doesn't mulligan the Damien, I am going to be a little bit confused. However, I'm entirely sure Santu knows what he's doing more than I do. I'm just curious to see what his plan is.
I mean, I guess he wants to only have one that he needs to protect so that he can... Maybe he believes he can't protect both, but he can protect one at least, and he's probably going to try maybe go for the offensive, stealing his opponent's order cards rather than trying to protect his own, perhaps, something like that.
Yeah, I'm not fully sure. Looking back on the round, I suppose like he valued Vigo over Stefan potentially if he just felt like Stefan was going to get assassinated or something, stolen. But I'm really not quite sure.
Perhaps. So we do see the early Glynis come down, and unless Olsmer is running something like Tony Shell, I don't think he would have a way to deal with this. And I believe that if he did have a way to deal with this, Santu would have probably played that Glynis in round 2 to try make that trade in round 2 rather than round 3. So I'd imagine this Glynis is probably going to stick here.
That Assassinate does come down and comes very close to taking the Glynis out, but it is not quite enough.
Quite not available. And this, this will be able to boost it back up to 3, and he can't deal with both the Defender and the Glynis in one turn.
Well, you can with leader ability, but like we were saying earlier, that's not necessarily the best choice, especially when Damien and Stefan exist, although Santu's no longer does.
So the Glynis is at 3 points. So realistically speaking, how much does Santu want to get this? What does he want to get this to? If he procs twice, it'll get plus another 4, which puts it at 7, which would put it out of range. Um, he's playing. If he plays the
He does
okay,
have the
so
capability to. Hits the
all
defender
right.
off
So,
the bribery. And as far as I know,
well, that
Olsmer only
solves
runs the
both
one
problems.
Purify. So this could actually spell some bad news for Olsmer not being
And
able to
not
deal with his
just that,
defender.
it also proc Glynis twice, so extra value on that as well. So I mean, you get the 7-point defender plus 2 points extra on Glynis. So nine
Wow,
point
these are some
bribery at least.
talented briberies. Oh my god.
Boy, Damien,
Although,
but that's a very easy answer for Santa just assassinate. So he does pretty much snap to that assassination. Although, as we know, Santa being a very snap to it friend, does like to just smoke the cars down very very quickly.
yeah, he's shockingly able to play very well, yet at the same time play very fast. Not entirely convinced he's actually human, potentially maybe even a robot.
Yep, that does seem to be a very big possibility at this point. And we do see Vigo coming down to deal with Olsmer's defender. And, Santu having a much more threatening board state right now. Still has a defender on the board. And if Olsmer can't deal with defender, that means Olsmer can't deal with Damien. And if Olsmer can't deal with Damien, well, that's going to be a problem for Olsmer.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is not looking like the greatest situation that Olsmer has himself in here. However, it is not close enough to call, or not quite yet done.
I mean, Northgard mirrors, anything can happen. Like you can be up a couple of points, and things can happen. Things can really, really happen. So, I
Yeah,
I
with
don't
the
want to call Osmo out of it just yet, but sometimes, sometimes these mirrors things can happen.
with the variance of bribery and the diplomacies and the trisses and all of that, sometimes you can just hit diplomacy into diplomacy into diplomacy to get all sorts of assimilate value. Anything, very literally
Yeah,
anything is possible in these
yeah,
Nilfgaard mirrors.
that is very, very true. And we do see Santu just taking that Stefan at the same turn, developing his Damien, basically putting 2 threats on the board that I don't think there's any way for Osmer to, deal with. He does take back the Stefan, but Santu, by committing the Damien, he will be able to, oh, interesting. That looks like that Stefan will in fact then go through. I don't think that. Actually, no. Santa
Well,
can steal the defender, and then on the same turn, can he deal with that? If he plays Triss into assassination, he can deal with the Stefan. If he finds the assassination with it, is that what he's going to do? It looks like he is. And will he find the assassination? He does not find the assassination. So I would imagine that Stefan will go through then.
unless Santu comes up with some sort of crazy plan.
I'm not sure if there are any crazy plans possible here, but
There's always
Vanilla
crazy
Lead came
plans.
how much? Vanilla Lead coming down for 6 points, procking all that assimilate. That's a lot of points, and Santu is up by quite a few points. That's going to be very, very difficult for Ozma to try catch up here. I mean, he does have the Stefan coming through, and I mean,
Oh, yikes.
he,
Did
okay, I
Olsmer
think that was
just
a misplay.
not see the
Yeah, I think it
defender on
was.
both rows? Or.
Yep, I guess he too hastily jumped onto that Swears when the defender was on board, and I don't think that is going to be very good for me. Can play the double. Well, we do see the double. The double.
Garrison?
What's it called again? Garrison. Here we go. Double Garrison coming down for 20 points, but I mean, still a 28-point gap in favor of Santi, and I just don't see a way at this point for Ozma to make this gap without any assimilate value. Well, he's got 1 assimilate engine on the board.
Just go diplomacy into diplomacy into diplomacy, like we said earlier. It's infinite assimilate value. It's an easy game.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate how much Glennis value has been? And that is after it got damaged as well. So this Glennis essentially played for like, what, 19 plus points, 20 points potentially on account of the value the armor soaked up from the assassinate.
Oh yeah, it played for a lot.
Yeah, that was a pretty big Glennis. So Santa taking round 1, quite a convincing fashion. Getting the early win with his Nilfgaard deck, so now he doesn't have to worry about that anymore, which I would imagine is pretty good for him because, Nilfgaard can be one of those decks that, it's difficult. It's a very, as you mentioned, high variance deck. There's a lot of, you know, unforeseen circumstances that can arise when playing Nilfgaard. So taking the early win of the Nilfgaard, getting it out of the way, not having to worry about that, I imagine puts some Santa in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Now, the only real concern that Santu has left is winning with this Detlef list. However, when it comes to the Squirtle list for both players, I imagine they're both feeling quite confident that they're going to be able to win against one of their opponents. Not
Santu
Squirtle
winning
list.
against the Nilfgaard deck means that his opponent has to play Nilfgaard at some point. So at the very least, Santu will hopefully for him queue into Nilfgaard with the Detlef and get that win through, at least on the Nilfgaard if he is looking for that as a way to get a win through with it.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. That is definitely an option for Santu.
Detlef versus Nilfgaard, and that is probably one of the best cues that Santu can get off this, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Looking at Olsmer's other list, he has both the Scoia'tael Dwarves as well as a Charges Calanth. And Detlef definitely doesn't have the greatest bleed, ironically enough. It does sort of like its long-ish round.
Yeah, and it's kind of forced to bleed in those situations because it basically it can't win a long run against those decks due to the whole proactive engines versus reactive engine shenanigans. So Santu does queue against Nilfgaard, which is pretty good for him because this is one of his few favorite matches when he plays monsters, and that is what we're seeing here. Santu, of course, playing Blitzquid, giving us very little time to make time to cast the actual game, but yep, we're playing some Blitzquid, it seems.
What do you think about this Alp card? Because it did end up getting buffed very recently to be able to do.
I mean, it purify, right? So that's the. Oh wait, no, we're talking about the. Oh, sorry, we're talking about. I was thinking of the other one. Yeah, I mean, it's flexible for removal, I guess. It's for removal that if it overshoots, it can at least play for value on the spiders. But the thing is, like, it's kind of like a way like 20 Joust, I guess. But at least unlike 20 Joust, if you do overshoot the damage, you still get your full value. Whereas 20 Joust, if you do overshoot the value, you don't get the full value. So I guess it's kind of like Monsters 20 Joust in a way.
Yeah.
Another interesting card is
what is this card called? Natural Selection. There, I was asking about Alp, but whatever. We can talk about Natural Selection if you want to.
So these monster card names elude me. Some new cards we're seeing, kind of getting confused with the names. So Alp, I mean, Alp is what? It's a 2-point card that deals 4 bleeding.
I think it's 3.
3 for 4. Okay, so the same point card, but it does take 4 turns although to get that full value though. So I mean, yeah, it plays for a lot of points, but the thing is with Monster now, we've seen so many bleed cards that Monster gets a lot of synergy in a long round 3. With cards like this, you get so much value on your Orianna. I've very often seen Orianna come down on deploy for like 9+ points and then getting like 5 points a turn. So it makes Orianna just that much more threatening in a long round 3. And yeah, if Santa can win round 1 and goes into a long round 3 with all of his bleed tools and Orianna, I don't even think that does Ultimate run any type of tool punish? I guess he runs Peter, right? I think we did see a Peter, so he at least has some kind of answer for Orianna. But I mean, it's not going to trade up. It's only going to trade. It's actually going to trade down by 1 point on Orianna. Either way you look at it, in round 3 anyway. So not ideal for Ulzmer.
Yeah, like we've been saying, this is definitely not the matchup that Olsmer was looking for, but it is definitely the one that Santu is looking for, which means this is a super important match because this Detlef list not winning here is going to have a lot of problems going further into this game or into this match.
Yeah,
rather.
Very good point. The fact that as we discussed earlier, the Detlef having unfavorable matchups in the other 2 decks of Ulzmer means that if Ulzmer can win this game, it means he can kind of in a way target Santu's Detlef with these other 2 decks. Whereas if Santu can win with this, he gets this. We could say weaker deck out of the way, and then if his last deck is Squirtle, it should be he should be able to find a win at some point with Squirtle versus one of 3 decks that Ulzmer has.
That will require Ulzmer, however, to pull off a very, very unfavored matchup against one of the historically best online tournament players in Santu.
Yeah, definitely going to be quite a tall order to ask for anyone. So Ozma does take the round one, and I guess it's difficult. Like
He
Northgard
is going to have to
isn't.
take it with card disadvantage, though. There is still a deficit to make up. He needs to play a 9-point card
that
here.
is true. Oh boy. That means actually he's going 2 cards down, which means
Maybe
not
even
only is
3. He needs to play a 9-point card here to take 2 cards
wow.
down.
That's not ideal. I mean, so that actually means can he even? I don't even think it means he can bleed anymore. That means he's probably going to take a dry pass and take the long round 3, and that's not ideal either. That's a pretty tough position for Osborne to be in. He does commit the garrison set. Will in fact do it, but he is 2 cards down, and he's crossed the threshold where, at this point, going 2 cards down does actually matter. The 4-point or the 4-card hand limit is, the sweet spot where you've once you cross that threshold, there's no coming back, so to speak. So it looks like Ozma will, either way you look at this, go card down into round 3, or potentially 2 cards down if he does try bleed here and get an unsuccessful bleed.
So, in Olsmer's position, obviously he chooses to take this dry pass. However, since you already are guaranteed card disadvantage, do you think he maybe should have pushed a little bit further to maybe try to get a somewhat more favorable round for himself?
It's difficult because, like, okay, in some decks like Skellige, for example, that can actually bleed pretty well, I would definitely argue that you could push even 2 cards down. But Nilfgaard is not a deck that's very well equipped to bleed, and especially when you're 2 cards down, it makes it even more problematic. So I'm not sure. I mean, you're looking at cards like Weaver, like Whispus, Jurgen, so many just high tempo cards that monsters can put out very quickly. It's really scary to try and bleed it, especially when you're 2 cards down and playing Nilfgaard. So if he were to bleed, I'm not sure how he would even approach it in this position.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Obviously, from our perspective, we can see that Santa would be able to smack down that Weavis incantation for 15 points, followed by that Ozril for 14 points.
Yeah, it would probably end up going very, very badly for Ozma if have taken a bleed in round 2. But I mean, that being said, he not taking the bleed puts him in another precarious position where he's in a long round 3 against Detlef, which gives Oriana insane value. He's got Weavers for insane value. He's got so many cards, and Ozma only has Peter to deal with one of these, and I mean, I don't think a Peter alone is going to be nearly enough points to deal with all the threats and all the value that Santa is going to be playing here. Oh, he plays an assassination on that. Does that mean he doesn't have a diviner?
Olsmer does only run 1 diviner, but we do end up actually seeing this
wow.
Naglfar synergy here, because he did pull that Naglfar to grab that defender, sending the portal to his top deck, allowing this Weavis incantation to actually pull that, and that is going to feel pretty okay.
Really good value.
Okay,
so I see what Ozma did there. He's setting up his own lead on that. I mean, that's pretty good value because now Santa does need to use the Queen of the Night to answer that defender, which means that he can't play that Queen of the Night for 9 points. Not just that, it's more than just 9 points because of the whole bleed synergy. So I mean, he does in fact choose rather to go with the, I don't know what the name of the card is.
I think that's called Feast of Blood. Yeah, that is called Feast of Blood.
All right, so Feast of Blood coming down to bleed, or not bleed rather, to purify. And I mean, it's an interesting card. The Purify, as we've seen this meta especially, being very, very valuable with all the defenders running around. So, Purify cards are becoming more and more valuable with, the progression of cards being added to games, such as defenders.
Yeah, when the Purify mechanic initially came out, it was just super underutilized, and I think a lot of the people in the community saw the potential that it had, but there just wasn't any status effects that anybody cared about at that time. And then obviously Syndicate came out, and then Poison became more viable, and now we have this Defender tag, and Purifies are actually being super well utilized, and it's allowing for more diversity, especially when the lock is no longer doing the Purify thing.
Interesting that that Osman left that Queen of the Night at 3. I guess he's setting up. I can't remember. He hasn't used Swears, right? I don't think, or has he?
I don't believe he's used Swears, although I don't remember.
So I guess he's trying to set up Swears, although he does have 2 shots on that Hefty, which means he can, damage one of these Garcanes down to 3 and then steal it with Swears if he chooses. So I'm going to be curious to see how he makes use of this hefty hulge. Obviously, Santu now has 2 engines on the board with that portal, so pretty threatening there.
Chooses to go for
Does
Kingslayer. Grab
that
an
is
additional
interesting.
defender.
Another, I mean, it's pretty good for Ulzma, I guess, in a way, because you're kind of forced to put bleeding on that troll, which is really, I guess you could say, annoying for Santa, because you can't, you want to be playing your bleeding on multiple cards, because I mean bleeding stacks, and if you're putting bleeding all on one card, you're going to overshoot the damage. So the defender basically forcing Santa to put all of his bleeding on that sheet troll, or not sheet trolls rather, but that cave troll until the cave troll is dead, does make things very, very annoying, I guess you could say, for Santa. Although Santa does have the Toad Prince in hand, which means that he eventually will be able to eat that cave troll very, very soon. I wonder if there is a way for Ozma to boost that cave troll up to keep it alive.
Yeah,
And
I'm
play
not
around
really
the
sure.
cave troll.
We do see Santu sequencing in a way that doesn't actually commit much of anything important, while he's still waiting for this bleeding to actually go through to be able to deal with this defender, with this frog. Just so that he's capable.
Is going to be able to boost it up. Oh, he is he. He
Is he
gonna,
going to actually buff the defender? He
oh,
doesn't choose
no,
to.
he doesn't. That might be a pretty. That might be a pretty big decision there, because I mean, if that defender got boosted, what would Santu do realistically with his Toad Prince? Will be a brick, and I mean, I'm surprised that
And the rest
also
of his
didn't use that.
Well, this does require some very good hand reading from Olsmir if he was to actually make that call correctly. That is definitely not an easy decision to make, to actively choose to lose points on your own card in favor of playing around one specific hand state that Santu just ends up happening to have.
Yeah, I mean, and now we do see the Toad Prince coming down for full value whilst dealing with the defender and allowing Santa to just spread the bleeds out and getting the full Oriana value. Or not the full Oriana value, but rather some Oriana value. But I mean, at this point, Ozma is down quite a few points, and he needs to make use of that Yoink 6. I mean, he doesn't actually have to make use of it, because Santa can't boost that Toad Prince any further anyway. And down comes the Oriana. And
Probably would imagine to see the yoink on this Oriana, given that it's a rather threatening engine.
But is that going to be enough? I mean, have we seen Peter yet? Is Peter? I mean, so there comes the Peter. Pretty good Peter, but Santi still has the Oswald coming down for 14 points on the Jurgen, and still having his own engine on the board. And there we go. Santi takes game number 2, which means Santu, all he needs to do now is win with his square tile, and he's got 3 shots in theory to do it with. So pretty good position for Santu to be in.
This matchup definitely did go a lot closer than I expected it to be. I am surprised to see Olsmer did as well as he could have, and he even had a line that potentially won with that.
Yeah, winning. Yeah, that would have been very interesting to see what would happen there if you used the buff on the cave troll.
And that would have been a very, very big upset. Santu really could not, like we said earlier, have afforded to lose with this list. However, that isn't what happened. Olsmer did lose this round, or lose this game, rather. We are going to see a game 3 with Santu up 2-0. Alright, so in this game, we see Santu's Mystic Echo versus Olsmer's Calanth. So this Calanth list from Olsmer is a charges list. It runs Portal and Engines and Vernon Roach and Priscilla and Dandelion and all of that nonsense that is very, very greedy and capable of actually pulling off a lot of points. However, this is very controllable. And for the most part, this matchup, along with Dwarf Mirrors and Charges Mirrors, is a lot about winning round 1 and going for a 2-0. Do you agree with that, Spyro?
Yeah, definitely. These pew pew engines, as you could say, mirrors are all about winning round 1 and trying to due to the fact of order advantage being such an important tool that both players have at their disposal potentially. Although Dwarfs does have the upper hand in this position, and the reason simply is, if the Dwarf player does lose round 1, which is very difficult for them to do because they have a much easier time winning round 1 than the Northern Realms player from my experience. But if they do lose round 1, and the opponent does have order advantage and sets up their offensive engines before the Dwarf player, the dwarf player can use their justice onto the berserkers instead of the mercenaries, and that means they get guaranteed value because the opponent can't control them quite the same way as the mercenaries. If you try damage or kill the berserkers, you're still giving that armor value. It's still playing for 7 points. So, and that also can, still snipe off their opponent's engines potentially. So even if the dwarf player loses round 1, it's still not ideal for the Northern Realms player. So I think the dwarf player has the slight upper hand here in this matchup.
And we can totally see that sort of mentality coming down from Santu's side here, given that he's committed his order advantage early and proceeded to play the Gablor for Resilience as well super early, probably with the intention of having all the points that he's going to play for the entire game being stacked into both round 1 and 2, not even considering round 3 as an option. And especially on this blue coin where he gets the tactical advantage, it makes his job even easier of taking this round 1.
And he gets the order advantage on the mercenary to start with.
It does look like this was played pre-patch, by the way, given the fact that...
yeah, 3-point guard.
And the rowdy dwarves have armor on them as well.
Yeah, okay. So pre-patch game. That's even more threatening than for the normal. And Santu does. He commits quite a lot. Yeah, he commits a lot, but honestly, is it that crazy to commit this much, and considering how valuable it is to win round 1 in this matchup?
I don't think so. I completely agree with Santu's line of play here.
And he doesn't have justice though, which is going to make it much harder for bleed in round 2. Without the justice, the bleed becomes a lot harder. He still has to do it though, because he cannot take a long round 3 when he doesn't have first say, because first say, as you mentioned, this matchup is pretty much everything. So he still has to bleed, even though I imagine Santu is not happy about missing out on the justice there.
We do see Olsmer play kind of slow here. I'm kind of surprised that we don't end up seeing Olsmer trying to take advantage of the fact that Santu obviously doesn't have those ping engines in hand, and maybe developing like a portal early, trying to get a lot of these ping engines out perhaps a little bit earlier or a little bit faster than he currently is trying to. He's playing very low tempo at the moment.
I mean, he is playing low tempo, but I mean, it's going to be very difficult for Santu to get an efficient bleed done without the justice. But I mean, as you mentioned, Olsmer is playing relatively slowly, and that obelisk is barely hanging on for dear life against an army of dwarfs by himself. Yeah, at one point, trying to fend off the realms of the north, so to speak, against the likes of all these dwarfs. And I mean, he is taking a risk here. There's a 50-50 that ping is going to kill that obelisk, and if that obelisk goes down, I imagine Santu is going to be in a pretty dominant position for the remainder of this round.
Will he get it? Oh, he barely misses it. Hit the wrong side of the 50-50. Pings the R2's adept instead of that arbalist. However, it does look like Olsmer does have additional charge tapers.
Coming down to save the obelisk and keep that engine alive. And I mean, Olsmer did start off quite slow, but I mean, okay, now it's starting to look quite spooky because Olsmer's down by quite a few points, and he's going to start committing some resources soon.
The good news for Olsmer, though, however, is Santu's hand is a little bit bricked because of this guard. Santu is not really going to be able to afford to play this guard, given how it's going to play for like 4 points. Although, it looks like that situation has just changed up, and Santu now has an opportunity to play all of these cards for actual value. And Olsmer has also committed his leader.
Yep, and that means that even if Olsmer gets first say in round 3, he won't have nearly as a threatening hand state as Santu will, due to the fact that Santu will still have his leader. And I mean, Olsmer also committing the Roche. Does this even get him ahead? It does not, in fact, get him ahead, which means Santu can, of course, just pass here and take, but he does not. I mean, he just realizes, I'm playing dwarfs, I'm going to smoke, and I think that is actually a pretty good line of play because, I mean, he's still up points. I don't think he's really that pressured. There's not that many engines developed by Olsmer yet to threaten getting his card here. So I think Santu's making use of just saying, okay, I'm just going to try bleed you completely dry and go into round 3 with my leader and hopefully justice.
Or will we even see a leader commit from Santu here in an effort to just 2-0 and not even think about this round 3?
I'm not sure. That's maybe, but it looks like he decides he's just going to play all his cards, go into round 3. I imagine equal cards, but Santu has leader and Osmer does not. Osmer does, of course, have the first say. Wait, does
And
Osmer even have points
Olsmer
here?
doesn't even have the points to actually make it up here.
Oh boy.
Unfortunately,
Wow.
Olsmer just wasn't able to get those engines down to actually get value in time to not get too
there
low.
was. I mean, Osmer was. I don't think he was respecting the full-on bleed. I think Osmer was kind of just playing slowly, thinking that he's going to wait for his opponent to first commit something like justice before he commits, his valuable cards. And funnily enough, that Santa didn't actually have justice, so justice never actually got committed, and Osmo was kind of just waiting for his opponent to commit first before he committed. And by then it was kind of too late. So that was quite interesting to see that.
That really does showcase the power of order advantage, even to the point where Santu really didn't get the cards that he needed, but still being able to play first does have quite a bit of value, just because you get that round control, and Olsmer's always kind of on the back foot. He's always responding to what you're doing.
Yeah, he has to. You kind of have to mirror your opponent, because you can't exactly open up like something like leader and portal or whatnot if your opponent's not committing, and it's difficult to decide, because if your opponent doesn't commit and you commit, then your opponent might just take a pass, and then you've committed too much. Whereas if you do what the Osmo did and you don't commit anything, then you run the risk of getting 2-0'd. So it becomes very, very difficult. You have to kind of wait and see what your opponent does, giving your opponent full control of the game, which can be quite scary sometimes, as you saw there.
But yeah, we do see Santu take this first series by 3-0, very dominant fashion. I gotta say that is a little bit expected from one of the best online tournament players that we've ever actually seen. So congratulations, Santu. Nice job. Welcome back, and in this game, we have Pajabol versus Danarai. Their lineups consist of a Nilfgaard, NR, Scoia'tael, and Syndicate list, both of them. And both of these players decided to ban Syndicate. What do you think about these bans, Spyro?
I mean, Syndicate right now, obviously being probably the most scary faction in the current meta, it has very few bad matchups. And looking at their lineups, the only bad matchup Syndicate might have is Dwarfs. But other than Dwarfs, Syndicate's matchups against both players are pretty favorable. And I imagine both players want to get that Syndicate, out of the way, and so don't have to worry about it. Because, as I mentioned, it's a very, very strong deck that has very few weaknesses. And if they don't ban it, it's very likely going to get a very easy win through. And I imagine both players do not want that to happen.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. We do see both players have that dwarf lineup as well. The only real difference that I actually see is Paja playing the Foltist instead of Danarai playing the Shoop pincer maneuver.
Yeah, I mean, there's one other small difference. We have a Yoink 6 Ardle versus a Yoink 5 Ardle, so slight difference in the Nilfgaard, but I mean, still very similar decks. But yeah, the only real difference, as you mentioned, is the Foltest versus the Shoop. So, bit of a difference there. Otherwise, very identical lineups for the most part.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So let's get into this game.
Ooh, Squaretel Mirror. Okay. So, Pudgeball does get the red coin, which is in the mirror. Obviously, not the ideal situation, because you definitely want to be winning round 1 due to the fact that 2-0 is a massive threat when it comes to the dwarf mirror. If the player wins round 1, that means they get to have first say in round 2, and if you have first say in round 2, you can set up your reactive engines and basically just kill all your opponent's engines before they get any value, and therefore you really want to win round 1. And if you have blue coin, you have a much higher chance of winning round 1, because not only do you get order advantage round 1, but you also get the 5 extra points of tempo, so you put yourself in a very dominant position to win round 1, which basically might just mean winning the game.
And we see a mercenary commit from Danarai right off the top here. kind of reducing that order advantage that he gets to use later on. If he does end up taking this round in that round 2, he's no longer able to do the double of Radiant Justice into those mercenaries that really dominate that round 2 if he was to win this round 1.
Yeah, I mean, the one hand, you also got to say to yourself, you have to get to that round 2, and you need to get there on your position or your terms. And if you play the mercenary round 1, you put yourself in a stronger position to get to round 2. And I think maybe Danarai is saying to himself, it's worth it if I can get to round 2 with first say, because if you don't, you might lose the game. However, that being said, if you play Justice onto the Berserkers, it's still not bad. I mean, they're still engines. They still do damage to your opponent's board. You just can't control where that damage goes exactly. But overall, it's still not a terrible pull with Justice as a secondary target.
Yeah, we see that play come in quite often when the Dwarfs player doesn't end up getting that order advantage in either NR mirrors or Square Tail mirrors.
Yeah, I mean, they still get the thing about the Berserkers, they still get their value. Unlike Mercenaries, if they get answered, they don't get any value. However, with the Berserkers, if you try answer them, you have to ping through all that armor, meaning they're still getting their value anyway. So they're a very safe engine. They get their value much more easily than Mercenaries. Obviously, not quite as their ceiling isn't quite as high, but their floor is much higher, I guess you could say.
Yeah, they're pretty much guaranteed 14 points off that Novigradian Justice.
Yeah, and obviously some removal potential too. So potentially more than 14 points sometimes. And we do see Punchball committing the Monroe here, getting a whole bunch of Berserkers on the board, putting some real pressure on Danarai. Do you think Danarai is looking to answer this back, or do you think maybe he might start thinking about taking a pass here?
I would think both players have the main goal of taking this round 1, and we do see some big commits coming in from both sides here, with the Zoltan Warrior on the range draw from Danarai playing for how many points is that? 16? As well as obviously this Paja commit that plays for 12, I do believe. Obviously, both players playing cards that, for the most part, look like they're way overcommitting, but like we said earlier, order advantage is absolutely everything in this matchup, so they really are committing heavily, trying to get this round 1 so that they can get that favorable round 2 where they get to have the first card down.
Yeah, I mean, Punchball is in a difficult position because, as we mentioned, he did lose coin flip in this matchup, which is in this situation going second, and that is pretty annoying for him, I guess you could say, because if he is unable to win round 1, he is going to have to deal with his opponent opening up with double justice potentially in round 2, and that could spell disaster in the Dwarf Mirror if your opponent is able to set up their reactive engines before you have a chance to answer him. And the thing about the Dwarf Mirror, it makes it even more difficult because Dwarfs doesn't actually have a lot of immediate control. Northern Realms can still deal with it sometimes with things like Philippa and Falliber, but dwarfs for the most part can't actually deal very well with the whole order
Getting some
advantage.
heavy buffering. Okay, there we go.
Oh, looks like this part.
A little bit of technical difficulties there, but we are back. We do see this defender come down on Danarai's side, and that is going to prevent Paja from being able to interact with that engine on Danarai, even though it doesn't really look like Paja was planning on doing that anyway.
I'm not sure how Paja's going to deal with this. He's down 20 points. Obviously, having first say is very important in this matchup, but I mean, if your opponent doesn't give up the round, eventually, you can't really do much. I guess Paja's now trying to at least make round 2 as short as possible, so that if he does end up losing round 1, if he can make round 2 short enough, he can, he can withhold a lot of the value that Danarai might derive from getting the order advantage in round 2. So I guess Punchball's just trying to shorten round 2 as much as he can, so that he's at less risk of getting 2-0 in round 2.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Maybe we would even see potentially a Resilience Gabor come through on the side of Paja. Do you think that's a good idea?
Perhaps, but Zoltan is a big threat. Honestly, in this matchup, what I like to do to open up with, I like to play Gabble first because it prevents them from ever being able to kill it with their Zoltan, because Gabble keeps getting boosted up and keeps it out of Zoltan range. So I often like to open up with Gabble in the mirror, especially when I'm on red coin, just to put a bit of pressure on them. And if I lose round 1, I at least get some carryover into round 2.
And like you said, kind of prevents that 2-0 threat, or at least a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with playing at this point, it's now within range of Zoltan. Whereas if you play it much earlier, it can be much more difficult to Zoltan throughout the game. But yeah, Punchball's down by a lot of points. I'm not even sure if he can do this in 2 cards anymore, so he might just have to pass here. And going into a 6-card or 7-card round, depending on whose perspective you think of it as, is a little bit on the long side. You can very easily get 2-0. I've had Dwarf Mirrors where even in a 3-card round too, I've seen 2-0s happen. So I don't know. This round 2 is a bit on the long side. So if Danurai does find his justice, or has justice, Punchball could be in some serious trouble. He doesn't even have justice of his own, so he still needs to find his own justice, and that could spell disaster for Punchball if he does not find justice and his opponent does, and he loses round 1. That could put him in a very, very difficult position going forward.
However, because of the way that this deck works, and it's essentially Novgorodian Justice the deck, anything's really possible. Although, admittedly, Danurai is in a pretty favored position at this point. If he draws okay, he probably has a decent chance at a 2-0 here.
Yeah, and Punchball did not find his justice, which means that if Danurai did find his, Punchball could be in some serious, serious trouble. I'm not sure if Punchball quite has the answers for us, and oh boy, Danurai does find his justice. Punchball is now up against the mercenaries with none of his own, and he is playing the Gale for resilience, which is actually pretty good for, not resilience, sorry, rather, as immunity, which is actually kind of good for him in a way, because it does mean he's got a big body that can never be touched. However, it does allow Danurai to get more charges set up onto his mercenaries. And looking at Punchball's hand here, I don't think he has a way to answer these mercenaries unless he wants to play Call the Forest onto a skirmisher, but that's not a very good Call the Forest, especially when you still have things like Oak in your deck, and you would probably really like to be playing Call the Forest for Oak instead. But, I mean, at this point, those mercenaries are going to be so many points here if Punchball is unable to answer them.
And we see the leader commit on Danurai's side as well. It grabs a Zoltan's company rather than a second Justice.
I guess, yeah, he wants to step into Monroe pretty badly. I mean, that's an interesting one. I mean, I guess if it sets up your Monroe, it might be worth it there. But, I mean, yeah, I guess it's not... Yeah, okay, I could see that.
Allows you to do damage to that immune unit for sure.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah, that does let him get some... I see he drew the... I think... Is that the second Berserker he's played this game from hand? I mean, I guess he had no other targets then with the Justice anyway. So I guess it makes more sense looking at that.
Yeah. I don't remember if it's his second Berserker, but that would definitely help make some more sense for sure. Although if he has the Monroe in hand and it's going to brick anyway, I can't say I really mind this Zoltan's company decision.
Yeah, and especially if it can deal with that gap ball. I mean, Pudge is in a really awkward spot here. He can't really get anything to...
Buffering.
Buff again.
We're fine.
And yeah, I mean, now we can see the full effect of order advantage in the mirror. Pudge is down by so many points, and he's up against a barrage of offensive or reactive engines, rather. And if he can't actually deal with them, which I don't think he can, his opponent is pretty much going to completely wipe his board, and he won't be able to get the value off with the buffering with the mercenaries. Or maybe still buffering.
No. Okay, hold on. Sorry, again, some more technical difficulties, but I gotta admit, this game does look pretty over at this point. Danurai's in a very favored position. I struggle to see how it goes any way other than Danurai's.
And he plays the Gabble for resilience, obviously knowing that if his opponent isn't able to get any dwarfs to stick, he's not under any threat of Zoltan or anything like that. So he is able to play the Gabble for resilience, and that means even if he does for some reason have to give up this round, he still gets carryover going into round 3. So he's still in a favorite position no matter which way you look at this. But I mean, looking at Pudge's hand, I'm not even sure if Danurai to pass, if Pudge can even do it in 1. It looks like this game is going to be a 2-0 at this point. I don't think Pudge really has much chance here. And then we see a forfeit. Unfortunate for Pudge there. He lost coin flip, didn't draw the Justice. The opponent drew Justice. Not exactly the position you want to be in that mirror. Not much you can do about it.
Yeah, that is definitely not what you want to be seeing on the side of Paja. But he definitely has the opportunity to be able to bounce back here and go into this second game and try to bring this series back. Winning with this with the Mystic Echo list definitely is nothing to determine the series, though. We kind of expect that to happen no matter what on
Yeah,
both
I mean
sides.
both players should eventually get a win through relatively easy with their Mystic Echo, especially when Nilfgaard is in the mix of things. So, not a very, I guess you could say, somewhat inconsequential game one, not very deterministic of the rest of the series.
Yeah. Now, if Paja was to hypothetically lose this matchup, that would be a little bit scary
So
because
Padja is going to be up against a Pinsmaneuver Shoop, and that matchup it can be tricky, especially when you have things like Falaba and Philippa. Even if you are able to get your advantage, or if you set up your engines, Philippa can go right past defender due to the fact that she's random damage, so she can, ignore the defender, so to speak. And Falaba can obviously kill a mercenary at the perfect range because there are 3-point cards. So Falaba gets pretty good value. Philippa gets pretty good value, and Shoop is a very control-oriented deck. How do you think? How do you think about this matchup? How do you feel about it?
um I've seen it go both ways in like full blowouts pretty often, in all honesty. I really don't know what's a super good indication of how exactly the game goes, because sometimes I just see the dwarf player absolutely stomp with uh, mercenaries everywhere, and sometimes I see the shoot player actually have enough control and have the answers at the right time to be able to actually properly deal with the dwarf player's value. So
Yeah.
I think that's just a little bit more to do with NR drawing its control cards at the right time, and less to do with the dwarf player getting its favorable round.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to play around things like Philip and Fallible. I mean, obviously, the way you play around Philip and Fallible is you first, Philip at least, you want to put as many bodies on the board as you can before your opponent's able to play their Philippa, so that the ram damage is less accurate, I guess you could say. But the problem with that is with the shoot deck having so much control tools, it pretty much anything you play is likely going to die. So it is going to be difficult to actually get much to stick, and it's going to be interesting to see how Pudgeable tries to play around things like Philippa and Falaba. We do see a Brick Volunteers in Pudge's hand, though, which means that he is going to be, I guess, bit less able to win round one due to the fact that he does have the Bricked.
And why is this going so bad? So again, we're struggling with buffering. I don't know why. Actual NA internet. But anyways, we do see the Neneke coming down, synergizing with that Tridom to get 12 points, playing for some pretty big tempo.
Yeah, and Pacha, I mean, he has to be careful because looking at his hand, he doesn't really have that many big plays available to him. And it can be very, very easy for him to potentially lose on even here. He is down 3 points already, and he doesn't really have enough big plays, I think, to get out of this round if Danarai decides to commit to anything pretty big here. He does play the Zoltan to try and give him a solid pass. Do we think the Zoltan will be enough by itself? I wonder.
It does require a 10-point card out of Danarai, and we don't
Ooh.
actually see that get committed. That would have to be a really big card from Danarai. It would have to be a Falibor or a Philippa or something to actually make that.
Yeah, I mean, we do see him now having the opportunity to pass, and I think Pudge will definitely have to take this pass, especially with the brick volunteers in hand. They really see the pass. Pretty expected. Do we think the shoot player will bleed round two? That's the question.
Well, that depends on how confident he is that he's actually going to be able to either hit the 3x3 on his shoop or be talented enough to draw the
Oh
goddamn
boy.
buffering. Or to draw the Falibor or the Philippa. Um, but I guess we'll see, because obviously all those three cards answer the Dwarf's long round relatively well.
I mean, if
Uh,
Dan and I could find a 3x3 and hit the mercenaries, that is potentially game winning for Danarai.
dude, oh my god. Okay, it's going. I believe. I believe in the buffer. I believe in the buffer. Here we go, boys. So, in the round two, we see Danarai deciding whether or not he's actually going to push into the round.
I mean, looking at Pudge's hand, he does not again have Justice yet, which means if Danurai does push, Pudgeable is missing his most important card here to answer the push, which I imagine Pudgeable would really like it for his opponent to just pass. It means he can play the Gabble for carryover on the dry pass if his opponent does choose a dry pass. But let's just go ahead and see what Danurai decides. Danurai does decide to push, and how is Pudgeable going to answer? He's going to play the Immune Gabble. Interesting.
We're gonna get buffered again. Hell yeah.
What is going on with this?
So, again, we had some more technical difficulties because NA internet, so I decided to download the file. No more problems. And now we see Danurai playing that Baron to...
It's an interesting Baron. I mean, he's not going to really get much reset value in this anyway. But he doesn't also, the other side, doesn't have many threats that it can actually get onto it. I guess a defensive Baron might be the best use of it, to be honest. I don't think an offensive Baron, unless he's looking to Baron a mercenary, not a mercenary, a guard at the end of the round or something like that. But yeah, interesting. I guess he doesn't have anything practice to play. That's probably the reason for it.
Yeah, it does seem like he's struggling a little bit with those proactive plays, as we see a ranged row Visagird come in as well, although that could have gone melee row and actually hit some value, but Paj is really not playing a lot of targets that Danurai is able to take advantage of with his removal and his resets.
Yeah, I mean, if Danurai did play that that Vizgod front row, he would have been able to kill two of the rowdy dwarves, one with the Landsknecht and the other one with Vizgod. He would have been able to, mitigate this Monroe value quite a bit if he were to do that. So I'm not exactly sure why he didn't take that opportunity. I guess he just wanted the extra point on the Anseas. Well, not the Anseas, the Vizgod, but he could have denied some of this Monroe value if he were to have played that melee row.
Well, greed is good, don't you know, Spyro? We are in a greed matchup after all.
Yeah, although in this situation here, oh boy, down comes the leader and the Faliber. That's a very aggressive line from Danurai here, and Puncher does not have his justice, and he's not really able to punish this that much. He is going to need to survive this round. I mean, if Puncher is able to get out of this round, he will be very happy going into round 3 due to the fact that he's been able to get his opponent's leader out and Faliber. But I mean, can Puncher survive this round? What do you think?
Yeah, that definitely is the question. We obviously still see Tree there, but with the likes of Skirmisher and Volunteers and Mercenary in hand, it's not exactly looking great. So maybe Paj is just trying to bluff with these strong cards that he's playing here and just telling Danurai, like, yeah, my hand's really good. Trust me, you definitely don't want to keep pushing me here. I can get card advantage. Just trust me.
Yeah, I mean, that might be what Pudge is trying to think, but I mean, if Danurai has a good hand himself, he can be in a lot of trouble. We do see Pudge committing his leader here and does play the Zoltan. It's not a bad Zoltan. That Zoltan is going to come down and imagine to kill the Vizgod. So, a pretty good Zoltan coming down from Pudge, and he does now tempo ahead of his opponent. But as we mentioned, the rest of his hand, if you want to discount the Oak, is looking quite weak. So he still is under some threat of getting 2-0 potentially. It does depend, though, a lot on what the contents of Danurai's last 3 cards are.
Yeah, I mean, Paj is up by 7 at this point with a little bit of engine value going, and obviously still has that Gabor on board. And Danurai does end up taking that pass, which I imagine Paj is actually not super happy about. If this round did continue to go on, he was pretty capable of trading up.
Yeah, I mean, Danurai did get out Pudge's leader, and I think for the most part, Pudge's leader is a bit more valuable than Danurai's leader.
Finally hits that justice.
Yeah, finally got the justice out of the last 2 games. But the question is how good is the justice going to be when you are up against the likes of Philippa? And do you think this justice is going to be particularly good? What do you think the best targets are for the justice?
Does he still have access to the Berserkers? I don't remember if he still has one in deck.
I believe he played at least one of them. He might have another one, which I guess would... Yeah, he does have another one. So he does still have the Berserkers to play with Justice, which obviously does mean he still gets the value regardless. We do see Anseas coming down here to clean up that Mercenary, and Pudger is going to answer right back with a Justice, and I imagine probably going to be onto the Berserkers, and that is exactly what we see here. And the question is, how can Danurai answer these efficiently? Is there any efficient answer for him to deal with these?
Not that I can think of. Obviously, that cleaver does end up playing for 7 points, which is pretty alright, but it doesn't end up taking out the dwarf body, which would hypothetically deny guard value on the 2 guards he has in hand, as well as that oak value. These bodies that are getting spammed on Pasha's board all are worth additional points on his other cards here.
Yeah, each of these bodies are worth actually 3 points. 1 point for each guard and the oak. So every body that Padgett gets to stick is essentially worth 3 extra points for him. And every body that Danarai is able to kill is worth 3 extra points for him if he's able to kill it. So it's gonna be interesting to see if Danarai is able to efficiently answer all of these threats. And he does play the Philippa and doesn't actually kill that many. I think it killed 2 dwarfs, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I do believe it was 2 dwarves, which takes away a
Yeah.
total of 4 points from Paja's remaining cards.
6 points, isn't it?
Yeah, it already
He's
played the
already
guard.
played, he already played. Right. Yeah. So 4 points. They got, and he's going for Shoop Hunter. What does he get?
Random
Ooh,
row effect.
that's
It's
very late in the
Frost.
game.
Although
Yeah, that's
Frost is pretty decent.
I mean, yeah, it kills 2 dwarfs, but I think Danarai really needs to get the Ship Hunter 3x3. I don't think Frost is going to be good enough. Yes, when you got up against Oak, I mean, it's relatively close. I wonder how that game would have gone if Danarai hit the 3x3 there. That would have been very interesting. But Paja does take the game too, and that was a very surprising one. I mean, at one point in round two, it looked like Paja was in a really bad spot, but he was able to utilize his leader ability to get some card advantage there, and that actually ended up being I think might have made the difference there. That was a pretty interesting game.
Yeah, Mr. Danarai low rolled the shoop, and like we all know that the best players always high roll the shoop. So Danarai decided to be a not very talented player there, and hit the 40%, missed the option he was looking for, and ends up losing the game because of it.
Yeah, and now we will go into game number 3, and both players are 1-1 in the series, and they have both won with their dwarfs. So dwarfs are now completely out of the rest of the series, and it does look like we are in a Northern Realms mirror. Although I wouldn't exactly call it a mirror when you have Pincers Shoop on the one side and Faltist, or should I say, Inspired Zeal on the other side.
Yeah, this is just about as different as NR decks can possibly get on either side here. Although I imagine this round one does end up being very useful or very valuable for both sides here, and that usually is how Foltist games end up going, just because of how threatening Foltist round control can usually end up being.
Yeah, and looking at Pudge's hand, he has the Roche and the Blue Stripe Scout. So if Danarai is not careful, Pudge could very easily use this to get card advantage here, because Roche is an absolutely monstrous play, especially on red coin. And Pudge actually also has the follow up with the Blue Stripe Scout, playing for an additional 8 points of tempo and 4 points of carryover, and an extra body for Draug in potentially round 2 or 3. So Pacha has a very strong hand here, and a good coin for this hand, in fact, which means he won't waste these resources. He will actually be able to leverage card advantage with it. And Pacha kept his charge with that Drain Archer there, quite interestingly, to set up the Roche Merciless, I guess.
Yeah, maybe planning on using it kind of like you would use a Mauler, but obviously we see him actually end up committing the Mauler after committing those Redanian Archer charges, so maybe his plan ended up changing when this Enchantress got committed here.
Yeah, I mean, it is important to note that Danarai doesn't really possess any type of wide removal. His deck is mostly focused on single removal, meaning that if Pudge is able to swarm the board in round 3, Danarai does not actually have many efficient answers to that, and that could spell disaster for Danarai. So I would imagine Danarai would really like to win this round and try bleed that out in round 2. But if Danarai, looking at this hand from Pudge, I just don't really see a way Danarai will be able to win this round 1 when he's up against a Roche Merciless and a Blue Stripe Scout.
It also obviously doesn't help that he is playing a Shoop deck, and Shoop decks notoriously have quite a few bad bronzes within them, and usually in the round 1s we end up seeing a couple of those come down, like the PFI, for instance, or the Lyrian Scytheman, or any of these not so great 4 provision cards that you're forced to run as the Shoop player.
Yeah, that being said, Danarai is
He does
doing a
get the
good job
round.
at Yeah, he is. He did do a good job there of denying the Roche Death Wish there, and basically making it, I guess you could say, impossible for Pudge to get a Death Wish Roche down,
Death
which
blow.
means that, or Death Blow rather, yeah, Death Blow on the Roche, meaning that that actually allowed him to win round one, and now he is in an opportunity to bleed round two. However, due to the fact that Pudge hasn't utilized um, the commando package yet, means that if Danarai is to bleed here, it means he is going to be playing into that whole, playing for carryover scenario for Pudger, meaning that Pudger will be able to just, play for carryover and for points, get card advantage, and potentially go into an explosive round three with all those commandos coming out of the deck potentially.
Yeah, and perhaps Paj's plan here, he's saying to himself, I would kind of like a long round two in which I get bled in so that I can actually really leverage this Draug value that I probably end up having to commit in this round, just so that I don't kind of get screwed and only end up with one or two Revenants off of this Draug and maybe end up being forced to commit more than I would want, like, for example, committing his tutor into his second set of commandos, like that Royal Decree.
Yeah, I mean, it will be difficult for Pudge to actually be able to play this Draug due to the control nature of Shoot being able to just, kill pretty much everything. So I'm not even sure if Pudge is going to have a good opportunity to play the Draug in this
Which is
round.
even more of a reason to take that long round, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very true. But that being said, I wonder how Pudge is going to make use of this Roche. He doesn't really have much ways to set up besides the Visigoth. That's pretty much the only way. I guess you could also use Falliber potentially. Falliber is set up already on the Cleaver if Pudge were to use. So I guess Pudge does have ways to set up his Roche. And like I said, the nice thing about him keeping this package for round two, it means that if he is to commit the Roche, if his opponent continues to play into that, not only is his opponent going to give up card advantage, but his opponent is going to play into Pudge's carryover, which is a very, very scary thing when you're up against Falters, making it very, very difficult to bleed them in a situation such as this, where they still have their commander package available to them.
Then we see that Baron come in from Danarai's side, feeling pretty safe that it's actually going to end up living when Paja has no more access to that Selkirk. I do believe this list does run an on-Sace, however, it seems like Danarai is betting that Paja would not use that Zeal on the on-Sace, although I am looking at the list and it doesn't look like it's in there anyway. So.
And Pudger using the Visgod to set up the Roche and damage the Baron, taking away the inspired boon that the Baron receives when it is boosted. So
But
I
he is
guess
giving an opportunity to play around this death blow by giving Danarai a turn to deal with it.
Is Danarai going to play around this though? Is he going to boost up the cleaver to play around the Roche death blow? It looks like he's thinking about it. Is there anything else he wants to keep these Neneke charges for?
I don't remember if we saw a Tridem in round one. I'm pretty sure we did.
We did. Yes, we did.
Perhaps a Visigoth?
Yeah, I guess try and keep it for Visigoth. But he does use most of the charges there. And now Paja doesn't really have much ways to set it up anymore. He can't really use Falliber. He can't really use his Roche. So it looks like he's considering playing the Draug here and just saying, okay, 2 human bodies is good enough for me in this matchup. And that's exactly what we see from him. He does play the Draug. And I guess, yeah, as you mentioned, it gets him ahead. It denies a bit of bleeding value. And as mentioned, it's not easy to get human bodies in this matchup due to the removal nature of Shoop. So I guess it's about as good as value of any that Pudger will receive from this Draug.
Yeah, that denying 1 bleeding value there is actually the difference that makes him go from tying right now to tempoing ahead and threatening that card advantage.
Yeah, I really like this play from Pudger. The nice thing about this is those Revenants can help set up the Falliber, and if it sets up the Falliber, Falliber can help set up the Roche. So these Revenants are going to be able to, if they're not unable to get their whole death blow shenanigans, they are able to at least help set up Pudger with his Roche.
And we see a leader commit from Danarai here, obviously getting quite scared about the whole card disadvantage that's getting threatened here, and commits the Stennis as well, which is up to a 10-point Visigoth with 5 targeted removal now. Although,
yeah, that was a very big commitment from Danarai, but I mean, he did commit leader, which means that even if he is able to protect his card or defend his card advantage, he is still going to be down a leader for round 3, which is obviously quite detrimental potentially here.
I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure I did just see the Visigold in Danarai's deck.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think he played early, didn't he? He played it back, or was it game one? I actually can't remember.
I can't either. Commentating the wrong cards, NA casting. So
um,
setting
and
up
there
the
comes the
Falibor
setup.
there.
Yeah, as mentioned, he's using the Revenant to set the Falibur, and I doesn't look like he gets to set up his Roche though. So I'm not entirely sure how Pudge is going to be able to set up his Roche. He does give Danarai a pass here, which I guess isn't the worst thing in the world due to the fact that Danarai has committed leader. So even if Danarai were to pass here, Pudge can quite happily take this with a blue stripe scout and not be too sad about that due to the fact he still keeps his Roche
Or
and his
even a
important
Pavetta.
cards going into round 3. Yeah, or even a Pavetta potentially too.
Considering that Scout is most likely going to end up being 8 points in the round 3.
It is interesting to note that Pacha is running what is that card called again? The boosting by all units of the same category.
The
The card's name.
Voimir, I think
Yeah,
is
it
what
is
it's
interesting to
called.
note that Pacha is running Voimir. That's a very unusual card. What do you think about that inclusion?
Um, well, it kind of seemed like a little bit of a win more card with the Revenants running around. Like, if you have that many Revenants, you're probably kind of stomping in the matchup anyway. But
That is true, but I mean, it could also be used on commanders, I suppose, in like round 1 situation, perhaps. But yeah, it definitely is an interesting card. You don't see it that often, but I mean, sometimes it can get some pretty crazy value, and sometimes it can get like pretty okay-ish value. It's a very interesting card to be running. I'm not 100% sure the exact thought process behind it, but it is definitely an interesting one to include in your deck. And look at Pudge's hand round 3 here. He does have 2 bronze, but he still has the Roche, and that Roche is going to play for absolutely huge amount of points. He does not have the drag anymore to make the full use of the whole swarm package here, but I mean, this is still a very scary hand for Pudge due to the fact that he has a Roche in hand, which can play for upwards of 20 points very easily. What is his Royal Decree target going to be, though? And his ADC
well,
target?
it could be that Voimir, if that is his name. I think that's what his name is. Which would play for 8 points and 3 armor, or it could be that Sabrina, or Sabrina, Death
Yeah,
Wish.
Sabrina could be. I mean, I guess he could potentially use Sabrina to set up his death blow on Roche, but I don't exactly expect to see a Sabrina come down. It's just short round 3.
Well,
I guess it
he
could be possible, but it
does have the
got a
2
lot to
leader charges. I don't know if he even needs to worry about setting up this Roach Death Blow anymore. I
Yeah, I guess he could just use his leader charge to smoke right through it. But Danarai, not very good at finding the 60% on ship, is he?
he's missed 2 games in a row now. It's cost him 4 points both times.
Yeah, not particularly what you want to be seeing here if you're on Stanner's side, finding the ship lock, which still does deny, I believe, 2 points, but obviously if you got the ship damage, we've got a 4 additional points to deal with that completely. And we do see Pacha commit both the charge here, get the Roche down. That is an absolutely absurd amount of points, and Paja is now up by quite a few points. We do see Philippa coming down here, getting the full value, but Pudge is still up on points, and
He actually
it's going
gets
to be
to
very.
leverage this Philippa value because the second commando didn't end
Yeah.
up getting killed.
Yep, I guess Pavetta just played for a glorified Blue Stripe Scout here.
10-point Blue Stripe Scout, I'll take that. I'd be very happy if
Yep.
I was Pasha about that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, still very, very good value. And it looks like Dano just doesn't have the answers to deal with all the swarm, and that's kind of the downsides of Ship. Is Ship can't really deal very well with decks that go wide. It deals well with decks that play singular engines, but when it comes to decks that go wide, such as this, it can be a big problem for Ship to deal with.
Royal Decree, the Blue Stripe Scout. That's interesting.
I mean, it's an 8-point Royal Decree that gives him 2 additional points on the Voimir, so potentially a 10-point Royal Decree. Not terrible, I guess.
Doesn't it only give 1 point more?
Oh, is it only boost every card by 1?
I think so.
Ah,
And
my
1
bad.
and 1 armor, I believe. But I
Shows
suppose we'll
shows how
see.
much shows how much I play this card.
Now we don't even
Yeah,
get to
I guess.
see.
We'll never know, I guess. But yeah, Punchbowl taking game two. That is I think, fairly favored matchup for Punchbowl, so not really surprised to see that. However, now Puncher moves on to his Nilfgaard deck, which can be, as you've seen in the past, the more difficult deck to get a win with in a best of 5 series.
Yeah, it definitely is the fourth deck. Definitely the most popular fourth deck that we've seen, at least in this week one of this league. But without a doubt, it's leagues behind Syndicate, Squaretel, and NR.
The one positive thing for Danarai's perspective is the fact that normally Shoop does have a favored matchup against Faultist.
Unless
Not
he's
Faultist, rather,
playing
but again.
Iced. Do we have outdated deckless again? We have outdated deckless again. It looks like he's playing Iced.
Oh, okay, interesting. So Pudger is playing okay. Wow. That changes things quite a bit. So Ice is a very, very interesting one. With Ice, he does play very, very tall. And looking at Danarai's Nilfgaard deck, he does not run Invocation due to the fact that he's playing a Idle 6. So
Unless
when we get to that match, it's gonna be
Danarai's
interesting.
lists are also outdated. That could be the case.
Well, I guess we'll have to find out. But yeah, in this matchup, we do know that Danarai does run Baron, which is going to play for an absolutely absurd amount of points in this matchup. He does also run a lot of removals, so Pudge's engines are going to very likely be answered very easily. And what do you think about this matchup from Pudge's perspective here?
What? Wait. What is this card interaction that we just saw? The,
It damaged
uh,
it by wait.
the
That's also
exposed
wait.
ability didn't go off
Yeah,
on this
that's
axe wielder.
is that a bug? Was it only maybe it's only in your turn? Maybe it only happens if it's on your turn. No, it says damage by 2, damage by yeah.
I don't know.
That's in. Yeah, I
Hopefully that
can't.
doesn't end up determining the outcome of this game.
I'm not sure if that's a bug or if the card is just supposed to work. Or maybe only on your turn. That's definitely a strange one. It should have damaged back. But anyway, this game's gonna be a very interesting one because a lot of the power from the Skellige deck is obtained from Priest and Engines, and Danarai's deck does run a lot of removal and even a tall reset with the likes of Baron.
And the
So
heat
it's
wave
gonna
as
be
well.
and the heat wave. So double tall punish and a lot of engine answers. And that's gonna make it very, very difficult for Punchable here to, get the appropriate value with his cards. I'm not sure how this game is gonna go. It's looking actually very scary for Pudger here. Because this matchup actually has a lot of threats that Pudger is going to be very, very worried about going forward.
Yeah, and that banish on the heat wave is actually going to end up being super relevant here.
Yeah, obviously with the leader raise ability, being able to reutilize a card means that if a card is banished, his leader ability will no longer be able to be used to revive that card later on.
As well as the Sigdrifa and potentially even the Frey's Blessings if Danerai was to heatwave a priest, for example.
Yeah, I mean, Punch is definitely going to be on the back foot. I think in this matchup, there's a lot of ways that Denerai has to completely shut down Punch's cards, and Punch doesn't really have a whole lot to do that can protect himself from it. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes. Although we do see Denerai committing the Philippa in round one, and Denerai is on blue coin. What do you think about committing Philippa there?
Um, I'm thinking Danerai is saying to himself, okay, I need to make sure that I win this round so that last say Paja isn't allowed to use his leader ability and combo it with like a Canute, for example, to be able to get a really big point smack in one turn that he's not allowed to interact with.
Yeah, I mean, he's also making good use of these of this Radovid God, I believe, and the Redanian Knight. Not just that, he's also combining it with the fact that he's got 3 boost units, meaning the Scytheman does come down by 6 points. And that's a card you don't often see being played in a shoot deck, or you see it in the deck, but you don't see it getting played very often. It's usually just mulligan fodder. So it's interesting to actually finally see the Scytheman actually come down and seeing some play. Not often do you see that card actually being played. Usually it's always the mulligan target. So good use of some of his bronzes here. And that's the thing about Ship is it's not very easy to make use of the bronzes very well. And Danara is actually getting some good value with his bronzes, which, like I said, it's not very often you get to see Ship getting that good value with its bronzes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's got to be the first time I've ever seen that card on the board.
Yeah, and we do see wait, who won? Danara won round 1. So Pudger is not going to be able to. So Pudger's not going to be able to do the whole, Skellige Smork thing in round 2, which means we might just go into long round 3. And if we do get a long round 3, it means Pudger's cards are going to be playing very, very tall. And Danarai's got a lot of ways to answer tall engine cards that Pudger might play.
And we see just a proactive Mauler come down on Danarai's side, and that's because Danarai's still at the 7 cards. We don't actually know if he's going to keep pushing here, and it seems like he just decided to take that trade up. I imagine Danarai would be pretty happy with this, trading that Mauler for the raiding fleet there.
Yeah, 4 provision card for a 7 provision card does seem like a good trade, although it does give Pudger the opportunity to thin a bit. So even though Pudger is trading a 7 provision card, he at least does get some thinning value out of the way, so it's not a complete waste. But yeah, a long round 3, from Pudger's perspective, how do you think that's going to go with all the likes of Baron, Heatwave, and Sayus that can duel with the help of maybe Prince Dennis or Neneke? How do you think Pudger's gonna be feeling about this one?
I can't imagine you're feeling super great as Paja here. Knowing that Danarai has all of these potential tall unit punishes, really your only bet is, okay, hopefully Danarai misses Baron, Heatwave, Onsace, and maybe even a little bit of Shoop, and then maybe you can win.
Yeah, that seems like a very optimistic win condition, especially when Calanthe is able to find a guaranteed card from your deck, meaning that that even if Danarai does miss 1 or 2 important cards, he will get to at least find one of them if he chooses.
Yeah, and maybe even one of those heat waves or one of those tall unit punishes is just going to be enough to be able to handle Paja's round 3, even if Danarai was to hypothetically top deck the worst way possible.
And in Pudger's hand, real quick, we do see the inclusion of I believe it's Bear, Raging Bear. What is it? Raging Bear, Savage Bear. Raging Bear, and that's an interesting card. I mean, it does damage to your own unit by 2, but due to the fact that a lot of Pudger's units have armor, that 2 damage could actually be beneficial towards Pudger, because a lot of these cards that Pudger has actually make use of getting damage, such as this Drakkar, that when the armor is broken, it boosts self by 1, meaning that Bear on the Drakkar is potentially an 8-point play. And also has synergy with things like Hjalmar. But looking at Pudger's hand, he's got double Mardrum, and Mardrum is actually could be a detriment to Pudger because it plays really hard into Baron, into Heatwave, into a lot of things. So I'm not sure how Pudger's going to use these Mardrums, because they are going to play into all kinds of tool removal from Danarai.
Yeah, I think the philosophy of this deck more often than not is play so many big units that your opponent just doesn't have enough tall removal for it. Although it does seem like Danarai, in fact, has enough tall removal for it.
Yeah, Danarai does possess quite a few answers for these things, and it looks like Pudger's not getting anything to stick here. If he plays the, he can potentially play the defender here. Due to the fact that Danarai has used the Anseus, it means that he can't use his leader plus Anseus to duel this, but he does have Heatwave to answer that. Although if he does get a Heatwave out from Danarai, it does mean he trades his 9 provision card for Danarai's 10 provision card, and he gets out one of Danarai's Tall Punish out of his hand. Which I would imagine
Moon Dust.
That's interesting. So it still survives, but it is going to get armor now. But does Pudger have a way to protect this any further? I guess he's just going to play the Newt now. Well, not the Newt, the Olaf, now that he has an opportunity to do so, that it's protected. I would.
Well, there's no defender on the board anymore because of
that.
Oh,
right, because it's right, of course, purified. Oh, of course. So with the defender tag being gone, this is no longer a massive threat, but it does still get armor 1 point per turn, meaning it can be utilized potentially with Newt or something like that. And it looks like Pudge is playing a Sigdriffer onto a Drakkar, and that is not the ideal Sigdriffer target there by any means. 4 point Sigdriffer, not what you're looking for.
Yeah, probably Paj's plan at this point is, once again, saying, okay, Danarai, you're not allowed to have Baron, and I'm just going to make this ship really, really big, and you're not going to punish me for it. I don't know if that's actually going to end up working out for Mr. Paja, but that is probably his plan.
He doesn't have to go all on the ship. He can use one Mardrum on Defender as well, due to the fact it does have armor, which will soak up the damage from the Mardrum. He can try disperse the booster. Another important thing to note is the Defender has been damaged a bit, so that means its base strength has been damaged. So when Paja does play a Mardrum on it, at least the Baron value won't be quite as significant.
Is Paja able to Hjalmar this? Oh, not quite. So,
because the banish coming down from the heat wave was able to, completely destroy Olaf, meaning that he does not go to the graveyard. It is completely removed from play, meaning that Hjalmar will not come down for enough damage reach to kill the Baron.
Maybe Paja's plan is to canute this Baron down a little bit further just so that it has an insta-kill with this Hjalmar. Although...
Or other way around, potentially. But yeah, either way, I guess that might be anything. But, I mean, so... that means the Baron can be killed. Does Danarai have a way to... I mean, I guess Danarai still possesses Stennis, so you can potentially boost it back up. I'm curious to see if he does have his Stennis here to boost the Baron out of removal range.
Yeah, he does still have access, potentially, to that card, but there's nothing else, at least as far as I can tell.
In the deck. Shoot boost?
Shoot boost, that is true. But we do see the Stennis, and that does put it out of removal range for the moment.
Yeah, I think that puts out removal range forever, because I don't see any possible way that I guess a Mardrum combined with Newt could potentially kill it. Yeah, that could actually probably work. Mardrum plus a Newt would be able to deal with it, I suppose.
Danarai would of course have to decide not to use that bloody Baron charge.
Boy. Playing leader for a 4 provision card, again, not using the strength of this deck, not that he had a choice to, but he is able to deal with the Baron though with that. But I mean, still, he played a very weak leader to do that. I mean, it is probably worth it, because that means that he is able to answer the Baron in 1 turn. And I mean, it looks like Danarai is starting to run out of his tool punishes.
And Danarai does finally hit the 60%. I suppose it was at 90% this time.
Mean, yeah, 90% this, yeah, because our boost is just as good there too. But I mean, Pudge gets some good value with these Mardrums. But is it going to be enough when he's down by 10 points? I'm not quite sure. Danarai still has access to Valibur potentially, so Danarai still has another very big play to make. But I mean, maybe is 2 bad cards enough for Pudge here? If Danarai's last 2 cards are really, really bad. Oh boy. That answers that question, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if Danarai's last cards were bronzes, I believe Paja had a way to win. If they were very weak 5-point cards.
But yeah, that matchup is very, very tough. And unfortunately for Paja, he wasn't able to push round 2. And that's where the strength of the Skellige deck often comes in, is winning round 1, pushing round 2 while setting up your graveyard, meaning that even though you're playing cards into round 2, you're kind of playing as a form of carryover, where you're setting up your graveyard for round 3, almost like a Foltest deck. And that's a lot where the strength of the Skellige deck lies. However, Paja unable to win round 1, meaning he was unable to set up a graveyard and had to play a very suboptimal Sigdriffer and leader ability in round 3, whilst getting a lot of his cards removed by Toll Punishes.
Yeah, was definitely not a good game for Paja. He's not very happy with the outcome of that one. Wasn't super easy for him to win there.
Is this I believe we're in game 5 now, right? This is
game 5.
So this is going to be the game that determines the series. So both players obviously having to win this game if they want to win the series. And this is going to be a very interesting one. Skellige versus Nilfgaard. What do you think about that? That's a very interesting matchup, honestly.
If the Google Drive is to be trusted, this is an Artle 6 on Danarai's side, but I'm not sure if it should be trusted. But Danarai, all types of Artle have decent amounts of control and occasionally tall unit punish, but Artle 6 probably doesn't unless it runs a Leo. Um, so if Paj is capable of leveraging the weaknesses of Danarai's deck, whether that be uh, the lack of tall unit punish or perhaps maybe get most of his control out in this round one, I think Paja has a pretty decent line that's capable of being able to do a little bit of an upset here. Definitely a lot easier than the previous match that we saw, at least on the side
Yeah,
of
and
Paja.
it's also important to note that Pudger does run Hjalmar, and that means that Pudger, if he's able to find his Grimace and purify Danarai's defender, he should have an answer for the likes of Damien or Stefan, which is a very, very big thing when it comes to Nilfgaard. Obviously, Nilfgaard now with the defenders make running cards such as Damien and Stefan a lot more appealing. And when those cards go off, they get such an absurd amount of points that a lot of Nilfgaard's strength is derived from the likes of Damien and Stefan. If you have an answer for those two cards, or at least one of them, you're in a pretty decent spot, I think. So it is good to know that Pudge does actually have an answer for one of those two cards at least.
Yeah, that is definitely a useful note because most of the time this list does not run that Hjalmar and it doesn't actually get to take advantage of instant removal, and that is going to definitely help out in this matchup at least a little bit.
Yeah.
That does still require him to combo the cards together correctly, draw the Purify, and have a decently sized card left in graveyard for him to be able to Hjalmar. But that isn't exactly the hardest thing to do.
Looking at this board state, Paja does have a Yuta set up, which is quite nice because Yuta does not damage herself if she's the tallest unit on the board. Paja not making use of it just yet, saying that to himself, okay, if you could have dealt with this boat, you would have done it already. So I'm gonna keep on playing my value cards. He's not set up the priest due to the fact that I imagine that his opponent does have a hefty Helge with two charges on it, meaning that if a priest would get played, it would very likely die. Which is why Paja is decide to withhold the priest and rather just get as much value off this boat while he can. However, if Danarai is able to deal with this ship in any way, Paja might lose his opportunity to get a full value Yuta. So it's interesting to see that he is not utilizing this Yuta just yet and rather taking a more greedy line of play and waiting with it. Oh, there we go. Okay, this list is this list is not saying anything about portals. The Yoink 5 then.
Yep, Artle 5, which means there's quite a few more flex slots. It's not nearly as direct.
Which means
Don't really know what it is.
that means the likes of Yennefer's Invocation is still very much a potential. And there
That
we
is
see
what we
Yennefer's
see.
Invocation. An Invocation coming down for 12 points, plus setting down a Yuta in Danarai's deck. And that Yuta is going to probably play for 12 points for Danarai at some point due to the fact that the Skellige deck does go very, very tall. And it should be no issue for Danarai to get a 12-point Yuta at some point in this game.
Yeah, for sure. We do end up seeing that defender come down, maybe with the intention. Well, I suppose he did already play the bear, so getting the big units in the grave for that Hjalmar synergy isn't really a consideration at this point anymore. Just deciding to play the defender to hopefully make Danarai waste some damage like he did with the last ping on that Helge there.
I'm still a bit interested in that invocation play. What do you think about that? Because you do sacrifice one of your Tor removals, which is a big thing in this matchup. Obviously, Tor Punish is a very, very useful tool against Skellige, and Danarai did decide to give that up in round one for the Yuta carryover, I guess you could say. What do you think about that play to play the decision rather to play that invocation round one?
Well, it may enable Danarai to take this round one. He's obviously not capable of winning on even. He's got the wrong coin for it. But if it allows him to win this round one, it can let him bleed Paja, and then all of a sudden Paja isn't nearly as capable of putting big units down on the board as he normally would be in a normal long round circumstance. But we end up seeing the Yuta actually come down by yourself there in this round one, rather than using it later on to play for big tempo and reach in round two, perhaps to try to get that bleed through.
Yeah, the Yuta now coming down, I think, does secure him the round. He does take round one. Overcommitting though by quite a bit, 24 points up. That's a that's a big commitment in round one. However, it is important to note that now that Danarai has won round one, he does not have to worry about getting bled by Skellige, which is one of Skellige's big threats, is being able to take control of round one, bleed round two, step a graveyard, and then try win a short round three with the likes of Leader, Sigtruffer, and whatnot. So definitely.
You really think that Paja wants that short round 3 a lot more? I didn't intuitively think that, but I would believe you.
It depends on I guess the type of auto deck. Obviously, if it's some kind of hyper thin deck, then you obviously would definitely not want to take the shortest round. But I mean, the thing is, if you go into a long round three, if your opponent still has tall punish, you are going to play very, very tall in a long round three, and it might not be the greatest thing. It depends a bit on the list, I guess. I guess with invocation out of the way, it becomes a lot less likely. Although we do see Danarai pushing round two for a bit of thinning here. That's a bit dangerous. Can Pacha ever get ahead here in one card? I don't think he can. I guess it's safe for him to do this.
Yeah, given the fact that Yuta is in Danarai's graveyard and not Paja's, that Sig doesn't play for 12.
Yeah, so I guess it's a safe player. I wonder if Danarai's actually going to do a bleed here, or if he's just planning on playing the thinning and then getting out.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how these guys decide to play it, because we seem to be at a little bit of a disagreement at how at how the matchup usually ends up going.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting. But there's so many different Nilfgaard decks. There's so many different ways it can be played. It does depend a bit on what your opponent's playing. I guess if they have things like Leo or whatnot, you definitely want to be taking a short run. Whereas they don't have cards that have tall punish, a longer run might be better for you. But we obviously with the open deck list, obviously we don't actually know the deck list apparently. But I guess with the players knowing the deck list, they are better able to gauge at exactly how to approach the matchup.
And the first leader commit goes down there, followed by the defender, and Paja doesn't have access to that Purify right now.
Yeah, not having a Damien here. I mean, not a Damien, a Grimace here is pretty bad for Budget, meaning that the opponent, Danarai, can potentially play his Damien now safely, and that could spell disaster for Budget, potentially.
Unless, of course, Paja is capable of utilizing the leader to take out the defender, obviously comboed with this Morkvarg. But looking at it, it doesn't look like he has the damage for it.
Yeah, he does not, in fact, have the... I can't remember what the name of the card is that can do 2 damage, but he does not have it set up in his graveyard. He can do it, however, with Morkvarg plus the... I forget the other card's name, too.
Terror Crew Pirate, I think.
That one, yes. He could do that, potentially, and kill in 2 turns. However, if Danarai were to play Damien next turn, it means that Paja would not be able to answer it and would, in fact, rather be down. He would enable his opponent to play the Damien, and there we do see the Damien.
That is what we see.
Oh boy, that means Paja is unable to answer the Damien with the Hjalmar, and that might just spell disaster for Paja here.
Although, maybe Danarai isn't capable of actually interacting with Paja's board anymore. It depends on how much lineup power Danarai has. But obviously can't...
In this round, potentially not, but at least in round 3, I would imagine some point you'll get a leader ability off.
Oh yeah, for sure. But at the moment, I think a 2-0 is a pretty relevant consideration. It is looking a bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, Paja does have Hjalmar, he does have a Terror Crew, he does have Morkvarg, he does have some good cards to work with, but yeah, I mean, the gap is getting quite wide at this point, and it's going to be difficult for Paja to keep up here, I would imagine.
He commits that Terror Crew Pirate, and that does end up playing for 8 points. It's a pretty good low provision card.
Yeah, we do see a pass here from Danarai, allowing Paja to stay in this without actually having to go a card down, which is pretty good for Paja. But, I mean, at the same time, Danarai still has lead ability, so in a round 3 situation, Paja won't be able to play anything like a Priest, because the Priest will immediately be able to get yoinked, which is something that you do not want to... Wait, it's not enough, right?
Not quite enough to actually get there.
That means Paja is going to have to commit either leader or go a card down. That's... Oh boy, that could be very, very scary for Paja here. Wait, couldn't you have to...
Chooses to go the card down rather than use the leader.
Yeah, I mean, leader is often in Gwent worth a card. However, it does give Danarai double final say. And Danarai does have card up. does have Delphine. Both players have a leader, but Pudge unable to make use of his priest here. Finally joined the Grimace, but at this point in the game, I don't think Grimace is going to be able to do much. I think he really wants to find that Grimace in round 2 rather. So that Grimace might just be a 6-point play at this point. And Pudge, I'm not sure. What is he looking for here? What do you want to find if you're Pudge?
Probably not that Mardrome. That Mardrome looks pretty useless, and Paja seems to agree. Discards both that and the Butcher to get that Raging Bear. And now, obviously, Danurai, like you said, has that double assay, which allows him to play a safe Skellen, even without the Defender.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be super hard for for Padgett to win this round. I think he does have a practice play, I guess, with the Grimace, but looking at Padgett's hand, what's he gonna do with this Raging Berserker? I guess he plays lead into
Olaf.
an Olaf.
Yeah,
But
probably.
the problem with that is, does Danurai have a way to damage the Olaf and then steal it for himself potentially with his leader ability?
Well, Paja's gonna bet not. Whether that bet pays off, I suppose we'll see.
So we do see the Raging Bear, both bears coming down, some bear on bear action right here. And let's see if Danurai is able to maybe deal damage to this bear and steal it for himself. And if he is, I think that would just spell game over at that point. But let's have a look and see if Danurai has an answer for this Olaf.
Yeah, this is obviously a move of desperation on Paja's part. Very unsafe. However, he is playing to his outs. He understands he's in a very unfavored position at this point. And if Danurai just happens to not have the answer for this given line of play, Paja is going to be able to put out enough points to contest this round.
Yeah, whether there'll be enough points to answer to withstand the likes of things such as Stefan, I'm not 100% sure. However, it is important to note Paja's not playing any units right now that are under the 6-card threshold.
And we do see that tourney
Oh
joust.
boy. So I guess Paja's got to play like Royal Decree onto like a 2-point damage. I guess he could play. Oh boy.
He could take Canute. I don't know if it's more or less points though.
That's just very, very unfortunate. Paja, his opponent is able to steal the bear, and I mean Paja's up by 7 points, but with 2 cards left in hand, I just don't see much ways that Paja could potentially win this one. Oh boy, and
damn.
that plays the Swears as well. Opponent only needs 1 point yet take it. Looks like it is a Tony Shelmar. Interesting. I guess it's a mirror tech, and yeah, Danurai able to take the series 3-2. Very, very close final game, but it looks like Skellige just struggling a bit there in that lineup, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was definitely not a super happy game for Paja there. A bit unfortunate in that round 2 to not draw the correct cards that you need to be able to answer what Danurai chose to go for.
That Grimace in round 2 would have been potentially a game changer. That would have, I mean, if Paja had that Grimace in round 2, things might have gone very, very differently there. But overall, well played by both players. And
very good call from Danurai to go for that.
Yeah, I mean, he basically, as soon as he saw, I guess, that the opponent, I think what Danurai was basically saying to himself is, if my opponent has Grimace, I'd rather make that trade now. And if he doesn't, then I just, get my Damien through and just win the game.
Yeah, and obviously, the second situation happened, and Danurai's pretty happy about it.
Yep.
So, congratulations, Danurai, winning your first series in week 1 of the league in a 3-2 fashion.